Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Saturday Night Overdrive. Just before we get going, I just want to say that I will need you to tell me if my volume is correct, because I have a separate slider for my voice and the other people have another slider. So just let me know if that's good. Anyway, I'm here currently with Script Doctor and Scribe Light. There will be more guests. Tom Connors was running late. Latino Slant said he'd show up, and Nina Infinity. So we'll see what happens. You can never know. Anyway, how you doing, Script Doctor?
I'm excuse me. I'm doing well. I had a great show with my co-host, Dig Outlaw, on Scripts on Saturday. So if you're interested in hearing about screenplays that are unproduced but circulating around, possibly going to be put into production in the next year or so, that is a great source for it because it's not of the same Hollywood narrative. It's of actual creative people taking a swing at some new stories that I think a lot of people in our corner of the interwebs would be interested in hearing.
All right, cool. So your channel is called Script Doctor as well, I guess.
Yeah, it's just that Script Doctor. Make
Yeah.
it simple.
Nice and simple, yeah. So obviously, anyone who's interested in that should go check that out. And hello to you, Scribe Light. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good Saturday. That's what day it is. It's Saturday.
Not always easy to keep track.
Yeah, things start to blur together after a couple of days of work and other craziness going on.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. So, what's the stories this week? What should we talk about? How about Gene Hackman? How about that?
Oh, geez, what a horror story! You know, I've had members of my family have had Alzheimer's, and for anybody in the chat who doesn't know, the running theory right now is that Gene Hackman's wife passed away due to hantavirus infection, and then Gene Hackman, who had serious cardiac illness as well as severe Alzheimer's, spent a week or so or more in the house with his wife's body, just living somehow without any oversight and maybe not even being aware that his wife was dead until he too passed away, which is just
right. And because
insane.
Because he's got Alzheimer's, because at first it sounds suspicious that they both died, right? But
Right.
because he had Alzheimer's, he probably didn't even know enough to take his medicine for his heart and his blood pressure and all that stuff. So that's probably why he had a heart attack.
Yeah, his wife was effectively his caretaker as well as being, his wife. And so with her gone, he just, I guess, puttered around the house or something. Who knows? The thing that just doesn't click to me at all, and I'm hoping there's an innocent explanation for it or something, or maybe they were estranged or whatever, but the rest of his family at no point out of contact with for a week or more, just didn't bother to check in or something. I don't know. That
I think
part
he
still
was
makes me go
relatively
weird.
estranged from his daughters, though.
I have to assume so. That's the only thing that makes any sense.
Quite a few kids. And hello, everybody. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I would have been here sooner, but like you told me 4, and then you said 6. So like, yeah. Hey,
Did I write it wrong?
You said 4 originally, so I'm like, okay, you might not be doing it today, so I went and took a nap. I was like,
Oh, okay. No, I must have fucked that up because it was always 6.
no worries.
Whatever. Hey, Nina.
Hi, I'm so sorry I'm late. Hello.
No problem. It's been a while. I've been meaning to have you on for a long time, so it's great to have you here. You're always so positive. It's great.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate that. I like to be known as the positive person around, so thank you.
Yeah.
Who's this lady? I have no idea.
I don't know who you are either. Who are
Who's
you?
this person? Why are they here?
Anyway, we
Good
were
to see
talking.
everybody on the panel. Hi, Script. Hi, Scribe.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Anyway, so we were talking about
Alright.
Gene Hackman, basically, and
What a sad story.
yeah, it really was a tragic.
Yeah, a lot
story.
of people were throwing around conspiracies and other things, and I'm like, look, let's slow down and wait. Chances are it was just a set of, unforeseen circumstances that led to this tragedy, which it kind of basically was in the end.
I was
Not
thinking carbon
exactly
monoxide.
what I said, but
Yeah.
Well, most people were at first, I think,
Yeah.
and then once that was ruled out, that's when a lot of the conspiracy theories started flying left and right and right and left. And
Yeah,
to me, I
obviously.
agree with you guys. The worst part of this is the kids hadn't checked in with them in that long. Like, and then when they did talk to the kids, I think one of the kids said that the other one doesn't talk to him anymore because they have two together. But Gene has like a couple from another marriage before
From his
too.
first marriage, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
like altogether, I think he has either 5 or 7 kids. I can't get an exact count, but yeah. Anyway, regardless, the point is you would think within a month time almost somebody in that family would have tried to reach out to him and been like, odd, I can't get a hold of mom or dad.
Or even if not
okay,
family members, like neighbors or other friends or something.
Yeah.
But at
Yeah.
the same time, I didn't until this happened. Not that I keep tabs on every classic Hollywood actor or something. I had no idea that Gene Hackman was suffering from Alzheimer's.
No.
So that didn't
I
even
didn't
occur to
know
me.
either.
No.
It didn't sound like his kids thought it was that bad either, and that's what I'm thinking is the series of events is pretty sad, is that he's gotten worse over the last few months to year. Her mother just went into a nursing home, was another part of the story more recently, so she had started closing herself off a bit more from friends because she was taking care of Gene full time. She must have gotten sick, not realize it was the hentavirus or whatever, just thought it was the flu, died sadly, and now I guess the dog had just gotten back from the vet, and that's why it was penned up. So they didn't even get a chance to get it out of the pen, and sadly, like you guys said, Gene putted around for a bit, probably had no idea what was going on 1 minute to the next. We can just only hope that, his last week wasn't anything real bad, but, eventually he passed away from either, lack of drinking water or food or whatever that caused him to have, his heart to stop. And he already had heart disease, so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was just a set of circumstances that led to this really sad event. And, yeah, it's sad, but
That was the saddest
unfortunately, there's
part
not
for
much we
me
can
too,
do.
is the no family thing. Like I was like, these guys, he like no kids, no nothing to check on these people. Like
Yeah,
it's so
but they're-
sad.
I wonder who's got custody, like who's going to get most of the money and shit, because I guess he's got like $80 million.
That's
Right.
crazy. I mean, like I guess those people will have to kind of live with that for the rest of their life too. So that's something.
I think if they cared more, they would have called first.
Well, it all depends on the circumstances too, right? Like, I mean, again, I have relatives who they would check in with their folks who had Alzheimer's all the time, but then they would be like, okay, we got a caretaker. They're going to come see you every couple of days, but we have a family vacation that we are going on to. We're going to check in as frequently as they can, but sometimes you just can't do it. I mean, my great aunt, she had Alzheimer's. She had a cell phone. She would never pick it up because she forgot what that device was.
Okay.
I mean, it's tragic, but it's just the case. She'd always have it on her. She
Yeah.
wouldn't know what it is. And whenever someone was around, she'd have to be reminded what it is. That's a phone. Because all she saw was that she has this black box that's always affixed to her waist.
Right.
Right.
And so it could ring. She had a classic ringer on it, so it could recognize it as a telephone, but she couldn't associate that the ring was coming from the cell phone. She'd always pick up the landline. And there'd be no one there. And yeah, so like there's that frustration too. We don't know all the details of the situations. We don't know. All we know is that they had regular people that came by the house, I think, on a weekly basis, and all of this stuff happened within that gap of that week.
No,
Yeah.
it sounds like it has
Yeah.
to be more than that, because she died and had been dead a week
Yeah.
before he passed, and then it was another, sounds like 7 or 10 days after that, because his pacemaker stopped on the 17th or whatever it was. So that tells us that, yeah, he was laying there for that long, and she had been laying there for a week extra longer, is what they're saying. So, like, this is a matter of about 3 weeks. That's my point. It's nearly a month, and nobody had checked in with him. And this guy just happened to see them, and he was a yard worker or whatever. So you're right. They probably had just been scheduled to come in, like, whatever, once or twice a month.
Right.
As far as his house people, that's the thing that bothers me, is because did they turn around and stop having, like, house help come because he was getting so bad or something like that? That's a possibility, because there's certain people who just won't work with people that have Alzheimer's that bad. You know what I mean? Like, because they can't predict if there's going to be any kind of mood swing or physical
They
altercation
might
or
grab
anything
the
like that.
person with Alzheimer's, like Gene Hackman, might grab a gun thinking he's being robbed.
Exactly.
And shoot the
Yeah.
person.
Exactly. That's my point. So you get to a point where you almost have to, and maybe she was the only one he was still
Gave him a
recognizing
cut.
it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me sad, is like if every time he discovered her over that week and he had to go through that every single fucking time, and it's just like that kind of shit, just between that and the dog suffering and everything like that and his suffering.
Yeah,
just
that's
all-
horrific. Him rediscovering that several times. That's a horrible thought.
And if he's in a place like where Script is saying he wouldn't know who to call or how to call anybody at that point or what to do, he would probably just, freak out and then forget what he was freaking out about a few minutes later.
Yeah. That's sad.
I mean, of course, we're all just speculating here. We have no idea, but I mean,
No.
that's just...
We
what
probably
else?
never will have the full story. That they're not going to go out and do any sort of news story probably.
This
The
is as
family.
close as we're ever going to get to it. As long as there's nobody else involved or any other reason to, then yeah, I think this is the most we're going to find out.
Right. All right. So let's switch subject to the Oscars. How about that?
Oh, Lord. I'd rather talk about Gene.
Oh no.
You mean another brainless entity that doesn't know where to go? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
That was bad. Too soon. Too soon.
A little too soon on that one.
Too soon, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So last time we were talking about that. What the hell is it called? The French movie with the Mexican trans.
Amelia Perez.
Amelia Perez. There
Oh,
we
God.
Yeah.
go. That they were either going to shove that down everyone's throat or not, but I guess not.
Did you watch it on Dune?
No, thank you.
Just making sure. I don't know. Some people, do it so that other people don't have to. I wasn't one of those people.
Yeah. No.
I know Paulie saw it and everything, but no, I
Yeah,
think
he did-
all the scandal and everything basically made Honora the new darling for the sake of it.
Well,
Yeah.
Honora
One
was
of the
actually
awards.
good, so it was.
Yeah, but it wasn't virtuous. It wasn't virtue signaling a bunch of socio-political stuff at the same time. At least not as much as Amelia Perez was trying to.
No, it was not.
No, it
I,
had
I
more
think they
tradition.
were definitely planning on having Amelia Perez sweep,
Mm-hmm.
but then all that stuff happened, and then they were like, "Well, we need to reassess here."
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah, so that was probably a good thing that one didn't win the Oscars. Or, I mean, the Best Picture or whatever it was nominated for. It's still, if Latino Slant's or Paulie's description of it is correct, I mean, it's just horrific that it even got nominated.
Yes.
our friend Mikey told us about it. Mike Harlow kind of like went through the movie for us on Toxic Femme. I was like, there was like that one scene he clipped from the musical where it's like, you gotta turn it a penis into vagina.
Oh
penis
God,
into
that's
vagina. And I was like, I cannot believe I'm watching a movie with like lyrics that says we gotta turn a penis into vagina. And
when I saw that
No.
originally, I didn't know the context. I didn't know it came from that movie. I thought for the briefest second, I thought, is this a South Park production? Like, is this something that Trey and Matt did that was like
I
it's
thought
a
the same
satire?
thing. I was like,
Yeah,
is this
I was
a
like,
satire? What is
That
this?
can't be real. That can't be something from a real movie. Oh, it is from a real movie. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought it was like a Saturday Night Live thing, or obviously they probably wouldn't do that kind of humor, but something
No.
like that. Crazy.
Yeah, I also originally thought that when I was talking to Mike about it, I was like, what you're telling me sounds like this could have actually been an interesting movie, like a commentary, like a satirical commentary on what's actually happening where people transition and then they get away with whatever. Like it's kind of like that Family Guy clip that Tom plays where the guy's like sitting at the bar. It's like, oh,
Right.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
transgender. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So like I thought it would have been an actually good movie if you kind of did a commentary on that, but then they took themselves too seriously, so it wasn't that. But
That would be
I wasn't
anti-trans. That'd be turning a trans person into a villain, and you can't do that.
Well,
Yeah.
not necessarily, because it would be like they're a villain and then they transition and then they're not a villain anymore, which is what this movie did.
Right,
So-
but then you escape all responsibility for your past evil acts because you're trans, which doesn't really send a healthy message either.
Yeah, but that's also part of the dead naming argument too, right?
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. Yeah.
And that's why I think it would have been a good satire commentary on what's happening in the world, but that's not what their intention was, so that didn't come through.
Was
Yeah.
now I haven't seen. I don't know if anybody. Was Zoe Saldana's performance actually Oscar worthy compared to the movie around her?
Well, she made it through
Yeah.
that entire movie with a straight face,
Yeah,
not ruining a take as far as we can tell. So.
That takes acting chops. I'll give you that.
I've
that
heard from people who have said that they didn't like the movie at all,
Mm-hmm.
that she was good. Like, that
Okay.
she was good in it.
I mean, like genuinely good, or just relatively good to the movie around her.
like genuinely good. Like,
Okay.
working with what she had. Like,
Okay.
she was good in it. I guess that you could say that about a lot of actors too. Like in a lot of movies. Like, for example, I thought like Ben Affleck was great for what he did in, Batman, like the Snyder version or whatever. Like, not the Snyder cut, but the one before it. But I thought he was good for what he was doing, but it was just like the movie was shit. So like,
Well, yeah, a
what
good
are you
actor
gonna
can
do?
take mediocre material and make it, at least halfway bronze, if not golden, depending on how they're doing it.
Right.
yeah. Fortunately for me, I'm never gonna find out. I'm not watching that shit.
Neither am I. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I was really pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed Honora.
Hmm.
And I thought it was really good. I did think Conclave was terrible.
Yeah.
Kind of going back and forth. Like, I just hope like Amelia Perez and Conclave don't win. I was just like, I just don't care about any of the other movies. If they win, great. If they don't, whatever. But
thought it
Conclave's
was
ending was
good.
so heavy-handed and just, God.
Conclave
Just
was
that-
terrible.
Yeah, it was just bad.
I really thought that it was a shame that Dune didn't win some more awards.
It is a shame.
I hated Dune 2, though. I
Yeah.
mean,
True.
technically, true, it was good, but I was so pissed that Nosferatu got snubbed all over the place. Like,
Yeah, that was
You
stupid.
hated Dune too? Really?
that last half, it goes completely off the
Yeah.
fucking rails.
They screwed up
Goes-
Cheney ridiculously.
Yeah, they screw up the last
Yeah.
half of the story. It's like, I don't even know how they're going to resolve it in the third film now.
Okay.
That's
don't
why
think
I
third
didn't
film
mind
is-
that it lost, because I was like, the ending was shit. Fuck off.
True,
Yeah.
but like everything else that the movie did was right, and it's
Yes.
worthy of that accolade.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
the
think,
technical aspects, you're
Sure.
right. Yeah.
I don't
Mhm.
think Dune Part 3 is actually going to be entirely based off Messiah, even though it's given that pseudo title. I think it might split Messiah in half and only cover the first half of it, and then the first half of the film is to wrap up the war, or at least address the war cinematically, and then take us in there, because something tells me that Denis Villeneuve is actually going to kind of run for like a 5 feature film journey of this story.
Really?
Caramba.
Because I thought they were gonna do like they're gonna pull a time jump, and then
I think they
be like,
will, but because they
like, not
definitely,
show us anything. Just be like, oh, we're just sitting here now. Bye.
I mean, they kind of threw us with a time jump to a degree in part 2.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's more going on between Paul and Chani in that film than what we actually saw on screen. But part of me thinks, like, if they're going to, like, they ended Dune Part 2 on the cliffhanger of Paul and Chani not being together. And this is an artistic choice, which I don't agree with, but I understand why they've done it, is because they want you to come to the third movie. They want to compel people to see the third movie to see, are these two going to get back together? And I think that's what the first half of that movie is going to be. And then the tail end half of that will be the first part of Messiah. And then they'll have a movie after that, which follows Messiah to its conclusion. And then they'll do the fifth one, which will probably be with more into the God Emperor stuff, or Children of Dune.
Children of Dune. Yeah.
Most likely Children of Dune, yeah.
Right.
That'd be interesting.
Sci-Fi Channel miniseries is better than it all. I'm just saying.
Yes, it is.
I love that
way better.
series.
So good. So
So
good.
good.
But yeah, they ruined Cheney. It's like you don't, this is the whole definition of a strong female character when it's legitimate, because you have a character who understands the politics of the houses, and that marriage is a political move and not one about emotion. And instead you have like a spoiled brat here who's like,
Well, they just made her like younger and like a Zoomer. Like they were like, we're just gonna make her into a Zoomer, so the Zoomer emo kids, like, I guess, see themselves in her. Like, I don't know. But she's just. It was just so weird. It was like literally the last like 20 minutes of the movie. It just went totally off the rails. I was like, what's happening to this movie?
Yeah. I mean, I was like 12 or something when I read the book, so I don't remember anything from the books. So, but I assumed that was not in the books.
No.
No, it more ends on not so much of a climax or cliffhanger, just kind of ends with, okay, Paul is now in charge. And although Cheney is at first kind of disjointed that he's marrying the emperor's daughter, um, it's Lady Jessica that says it's a loveless marriage. It's actually a curse on her because she will never bear his children. She will never know his touch. It'll always be you, and then history will record you as his wife, and her as nothing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what the lesson that she learns. But for a book, that works. For a movie, that can work to a degree, but it's not as cinematic as her kind of coming to that realization at like a mid-act turning point within a story itself. To do that at the end would basically be like, oh, okay, so those two are in love, they're going to be happily ever after type of thing, and why would I ever want to see a third one? Because it then makes the third one a little bit harder to market, right? But now that you have this cliffhanger of, oh, the star-crossed lovers are separated because of a political marriage. Ooh, I want to know how that story picks up for the people that never read the book. I mean, it's not the greatest or most respectful marketing technique for a story like Dune,
No.
but it will definitely achieve what they're going for, which is guaranteeing the audience to come back for another story.
Yeah, but it totally cheapens the strength of the relationship between Paul and Cheney that's established, or should have been established, that they were destined to be together, like this sort of quasi-prophecy thing. And so when you make it temperamental, then you introduce the idea that, well, with one wrong turn, this whole thing can fall apart again, instead of being like bonded like steel. Like, this is the relationship that will not break no matter what. I mean, if they were separated, if you threw in some kind of plot device where they're separated by force for some other reason rather than something that was sort of emotional, and yeah, maybe, but I didn't like how they did it. It kind of ruined one of the core relationships of the entire story by doing it that way.
Well, for now it does. If they stick the landing in the third film, then it only benefits it.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's a hard ask to do because you have to realize that I mean, Denis would have to come at it from the Fremen point of view versus the Imperium point of view. And then finding a way for Chani, who was very underdeveloped in the second film. I'm sorry, she was. Finding a way for her to realize the political maneuvering that Paul is doing, and he's not doing it at the expense of their relationship. He's actually doing it to preserve their relationship, and that takes some maneuvering that unfortunately has not been established in the first two parts of Dune.
That makes her far more naive than she should be. But anyway, that's.
Well, I mean,
it is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well,
Why do I feel like Tom is sitting there like grinding his teeth? I feel like I hear you grinding your teeth. Like, I don't.
Yeah, but it's at Pizza Hut because I can't get my fucking credit card to go through.
Priorities.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, the thing with Cheney did rub me the wrong way. It seemed weird, even though I didn't really remember the books, and it's all in my memory. It's all screwed up by the David Lynch version, so I don't know what's original or anymore. But that part was bad, obviously. But I really enjoyed the rest of the movie.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it was pretty amazing, like what he's achieved to do with Dune, too. Like, just generally speaking. I mean, we kind of needed like a good Dune for this era of film, you know.
Yeah, it's like
and
the
he's done it really well.
That's like the only sci-fi that we've had that's been any good for, I don't know, 15
A long
years.
time. I mean, Star Wars is
On the
dead.
technical side of things, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
We haven't had anything. I mean, like I was so excited to watch Mickey 17, and now everyone's saying it's shit. So
Yeah,
I'm
they
like,
dropped the ball in the third act.
Mm-hmm.
oh man, like I'm so upset about that. I was so excited to watch a space movie. I was like, I'm so ready for another space movie.
Now you got to wait for
know.
Hail Mary, and hopefully that sticks the landing.
Yeah.
What is it?
Hail Mary.
What's that?
It's based off of a sci-fi book. I believe it's is it Ryan Gosling in that or
Yeah, Ryan Gosling signed on.
Uh-oh. I'm still waiting for Neuromancer, the series, to come out. They're supposedly working on that right now.
I
really?
don't know
Hard
that.
One Nail too.
Oh, yeah, finally. Well, supposedly. Let me predicate it by saying, supposedly, it's finally out of development hell and it's in production. I think it's Amazon that's doing it, but who knows? We'll see.
I thought it was
I can't
Apple
remember.
Plus.
Well, was it? Yeah, I mean that's right. It was. I think my A company's wrong. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, somebody's supposedly putting it together after all these years.
Oh no!
I don't know
please,
that it'll be. Well, yeah.
please.
Don't screw it up. Is all I say.
Please don't let it be Apple. Fuck.
Well, once David S. Goyer's not involved, I think we're in good standing because he.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
Apple
but,
that terrible?
Yeah, Apple only do the stretching out stuff. Like they just stretch everything out forever.
They're not. Well,
forever.
they're not the only ones.
No, of course not. But there are. It seems like that's the only thing they do.
I heard
just
Silo
stretch.
was okay.
Yeah, but it's also that you just stretch it out. You know, nothing gets resolved.
Well,
Just
yeah,
more mystery
a lot of
boxes.
these series,
mystery box.
yeah, a lot of these series have like 5 episodes worth of story, and they put it into 13 episodes. That happened on Netflix. I just watched Paradise on Hulu, and it really felt like that too. I have no idea how they could possibly make a season 2 out of that because they've pretty much. It's done. Like once you get to the end of the series, it's like there's nowhere for the story to go. So
Well, that's good because that's not what they do on Apple. It just goes on and on. It's just cliffhanger after cliffhanger. I fucking hate that.
Hate that so much.
yeah,
I cannot stand mystery box shows.
I know. I just want them to at least end the stuff, the storyline at the end of the season. Then you can have a new storyline the next season, right? Like it's
Yeah. Or if you-
episodes.
Or if you introduce a mystery, at least leave the possibility that the audience could, by watching and paying attention, solve it themselves. I'm not saying that every episode has to be a murder she wrote, but I watched that show From on MGM or whatever the hell it is.
Oh, right.
It's another mystery box show, and you're watching. It's like, wow, this first season. It's like so many other shows out there. It's like the first season's like really intriguing, kind of interesting idea. Where could this go? Then you get the next season, you're still waiting, and you're waiting. And nobody talks to each other. This is the laziest thing I've seen in so many shows. Information that character A has, which they could just tell character B and C, just for some reason decide to not. And then only by the end of the season, maybe do they mention, oh yeah, do you remember when the clown rode in on the motorcycle? Like, what?
Like right away. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, oh, now we can put the pieces together at the last second when nobody else could before.
Afterthought writing. Yeah.
I hate it. I hate that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Like Scrib, we reviewed that show Outer Range, remember? And I was like, this
Yes.
show, first of all, it's never gonna get
Exactly
another
like that.
season, and
Yeah.
second of all, it's fucking terrible. Like,
Oh,
it's just,
Outer Range.
it was awful. I was like it was just one mystery box after another, and everyone
Yeah.
was like, oh no, it's definitely gonna get a season 2. I'm like, why? Why would anyone give this another season? It's so bad.
Yeah, it had like the first episode or two thinking, wow, this has some style. It's got some sort of like Outer Limits kind of Twilight Zone thing going on. And then it just wouldn't reach a conclusion. And
No.
you're like, what? And then it started doing time travel. Like, oh
It
no.
was
As soon as
bad.
you once you start doing time travel, like, man, you better have some really hard and fast rules set up beforehand. Because it's like with magic and things. If you don't have some rules for how magic works in your universe,
Yeah.
then everything falls apart.
I'm like traumatized from Lost with the mystery boxes.
Yeah.
And like we all know Lost went to shit the second they just introduced the time travel stuff, like in season 3, I think it was. Like that's when it was like, okay, what the fuck's happening? And then, then they came back full circle and they were like, yeah, they were all dead the whole time. So it's
It
like,
really
what?
makes me appreciate things like Babylon 5, which was basically planned out from the first episode to the end in the
Oh,
first
good.
shot. Man,
Yeah. I
those
mean,
were the days.
it always shows when they've done that. Obviously.
Well, the
They
interesting
plan
part was
everything
that
out.
it was planned, but it was also not planned because like certain things happened. Like for example, Sinclair
Oh,
got
that actor. Yeah, he had.
Yeah.
Yes, the actor. Yeah, the actor. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
he had the problems.
Michael Straczynski has this philosophy that if he's planning out any type of story arc that involves actors, he always wants to write a contingency in the event that something happens to that actor, like contract negotiations, tragedy, or what have you, so that he can basically bring in another actor to like pick up the pieces.
Mhm.
Right.
Not a whole
And-
lot of TV writers ever care to do that, but he was the one who realized like this is my only shot to do this story of Babylon 5. I got to make sure that if someone dies or vanishes or
Yeah.
walks off,
Yeah.
Something
I got to
like
fall
that.
back.
Still-
Yeah.
I can bring someone in to pick up the pieces right away without skipping a beat.
And it was
Yeah.
amazing what he did. What he achieved was, I mean, it's on another level. I don't think anyone's ever going to reach that.
Well, he had a lot of help from Harlan Ellison to get that done too, because Harlan Ellison's a legendary sci-fi writer.
Yeah.
And he's credited only with a handful of episodes, but he was there for like a majority of the process too. So it's he had a good team on his with him too to make that the great show that it is.
Yeah. But the thing is, the problem is, I guess, if you want to look at it this way, is that with things like Babylon 5, you can see it can be done, and it can be done well. So when you see all these big produced, slick-looking sci-fi shows or drama shows or whatever else that just fall apart within 3 episodes, it's just like, why? Like, why is it that that a movie that's as long as The Godfather, I don't remember when I walk out of the theater these days? It's just like you had the same real estate, you had the same amount of time to tell an epic story and do it well, and it just consistently. Like, do we have any diamonds in the rough anymore? I don't know.
They're out there, but there's no investors to take the risk for them. Like that's the problem. Like right now, you have the technology is incredibly cheap to get, and to put it together takes another leap that's actually probably harder than getting the financing. That is getting the people that are going to stick with this project for up to 3 years to get it done and ready, and to get it and then find distribution. Mm-hmm. And on the indie side of things, that is harder than anything else there is. Like it's easy to get, say, $2 million for a feature film budget. It's harder to get people to stick with a project for 3 years to get it ready to distribute and then sold and then make the money on the back end afterwards. I know so many productions that got financing within weeks, and then they shot everything, and then editors and post-production people that they have hired just decide to walk away and work for something else or work on something else or completely change jobs. And there's the director and the writer and the cast left there holding the bag, trying to find someone, scrape some extra money around to pay someone to try and finish their film. And it ends up just collecting dust on a shelf somewhere.
Right. Well, that's sad.
Have you guys watched Severance?
Yeah, I've watched the first season. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the first season. I'm waiting till the second season's over so I can binge it. Because I just can't handle cliffhangers. Like
I've heard various things about it, that it's either really good or it's like shit.
It's the typical Apple thing, like we've talked.
They
stretch it out, and then
season.
they end it with a cliffhanger, and it's just going to go on and on until the ratings drop, and then everyone's going to shit the bed and do some. They were all dead. Well, obviously not literally that, but some shit like that, because now we got to wrap this shit up because the ratings are dropping, and until that happens, they're just going to stretch and stretch.
That's like the most expensive show that's ever been made, apparently.
And it's a single location. Yeah.
Why?
It's like a office room.
The second season. It's insane, like the amount of money they spent.
Is the actors' salaries or something? Like, why is it so expensive?
Well, Apple likes to spend money. The second part is that they also don't care about ratings. They only care about getting people to buy their Apple products. So long as it's good enough that you keep subscribing to Apple Plus, that's all they care about. They don't even care how it tracks with comparison to everything else. So long as.
But what justifies the cost of production?
Maybe Apple has it. Well, the other part too is Apple. The more that Apple spends on, say, media, the easier it is for them to kind of write off a low return on it and put that money against another product that might not be doing so well. So it's basically
money laundering.
Well, no, it's free cash.
I was about to say, like I'm trying to think of another word for this. What?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's free cash through tax credits and tax write-offs. So they've spent the cash, and now they're not going to be taxed on what they spent, so they can then put that over to something that made a profit. Therefore, by retaining the profit.
No, because Apple really needs to rely on its tax rebates.
Yeah, exactly.
I just put an article from Screen Rant in the back that explains apparently why it costs so much money.
Okay, supposedly.
Okay. Screen Rant, huh?
Yeah. They're like, here's why. They have $0.4.
$200 million. Well, it's more than The Acolyte.
Yeah,
200
$20 million per episode. That's freaking insane.
It's just an office.
What?
It says high cost for season 2 due to major stars like Adam Scott and large elaborate sets, despite majority of scenes in an office.
Adam Scott's not a major.
Yeah, Adam Scott's not a major, unless being on Severance has made him a major star or something. He's demanding more. That's just crazy. Also, you remember when TV shows, a season was basically a chapter of one story arc, and then you move on to another one by the second season? Remember those shows?
Yeah, that's
Remember
what I'm
those
saying.
times?
Good old days.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, like The Wire.
Oh,
Remember The
God.
Wire was like every season was like one big story arc, and then the next season would be like a new story arc.
Well, and they were all
Yeah.
so much longer. That was like the
Yeah.
old school days of the 24 episodes.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
I'm watching
this-
The Sopranos
this-
right now for the first time, and that's like I'm going through them.
What? You've never seen The Sopranos?
No, I'm on
man.
season. I just got to season 5 now.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Like the first episode.
Oh, boy. You're in for it.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh my God. I'm so sad that they're like separated. And
Isn't it so good, though? I mean,
So
it just puts
good.
so many shows today to shame. It's like I said, it's Babylon 5 or something.
it's a really good show. I mean, I kind of like held off watching it because I knew what the ending was going to be because people spoiled it for me like way back in the day. And so I was like, well, I'm never going to watch the show then because I know how it's going to end. But now, because everything is so shit, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch this show for the ride. Like, I know how we're gonna get there, or like where we're gonna get, but how we're gonna get there, I guess, is what I want to see. And I'm not sorry so far. It's great.
No. The ending actually doesn't. Even if you know the ending, it doesn't ruin anything about the rest of the show, really, at all.
It hasn't
'cause
for
the-
me. At
Yeah,
least
I
not
won't
yet.
say much more, but yeah, no, the ending is. It's so ambiguous anyway.
Ooh, okay. I'm picturing.
Well,
something
I
different.
can't ruin anything because there's no answer.
Don't say anything. I'm like, oh my God, it's been 20 years, but don't say anything.
Okay, I won't.
That's like
Well, I can't believe that Darth Vader was Luke's father.
Dude, I did that to Tom the other night because he was like, "I'm watching Seinfeld for the first time," and
Oh, no.
I like started to like ruin the episodes for him. And he's like, "Thanks for spoiling it." He's like, "Sorry, it's been like 20."
I was
years."
only half joking because
Yeah.
like,
I know,
yeah.
I know, but
I mean,
it
I've
sucks
seen
when people spoil it
pieces
for you.
and bits over the years. I just like the short version of the story was I had because on our streaming thing I can watch local CBS on Paramount Plus, so I just had local TV on there just playing in the background for noise. Well, it went from the news to Seinfeld, and I was watching the episode, and it was a cliffhanger, and the episode that followed wasn't the follow up. It was a completely different episode. So I'm like, well, that's bullshit. I want to know what happened. And then I'm like, well, fuck it. You know what? I've been meaning to start watching this show for a long time. So I just started watching it from the start. And yeah, so I'm like in the 3rd season, I think now. But yeah, so and then she just started, I was just giving her shit because she was going off about some of this stuff. And I'm like, it's funny because that's around the time the episode I saw. It was like a 2-parter episode where it had something to do with casting the show. And yeah, it was like, and
the funny part
Kramer
is
was
that-
like obsessed with playing himself and all that kind of stuff.
It's because my entire life is surrounded around like Seinfeld and The Simpsons. So whenever I like make
well,
references,
Simpsons
it's
references I
always-
get usually
Simpsons are-
because
yeah.
The reruns and being ingrained in my brain.
yeah, like the first
Mhm.
couple seasons, especially, like I can even tell you certain episodes. But like
Repetition, yeah.
once you get to a certain point, I can remember episodes, but then I quit watching at about 30 seasons in. So
Only
Or
30.
just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
literally, like once they started going woke, and I told Nina, I think the last episode I remember watching, and she's like, I think you and I had the same reaction to it. It was like, this is a Family Guy episode, not a Simpsons episode.
Yep.
What is going on here?
They turned towards Family Guy in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it got really bad. Like the specific episode I'm talking about, where it made me turn on it, was where Homer and Marge sell their bed to Reverend Lovejoy, and they keep sneaking into his house to have sex on it because their new bed they don't have. And I'm like, this is not a Simpsons episode.
I never
This
even
is-
got there.
Yeah, this is a Family Guy episode. Like, this is weird. Like, this just doesn't feel like The Simpsons. Yeah, sex has kind of been alluded to, been a part of here and there in the background, but it's never been this direct in the show. And it
No,
was
it's
just-
pretty direct. There's the whole the tonic that Simpson and Son.
Yeah,
did.
the tonic episode was so
A little
good.
bit there, but not like this. Like, this just felt, how do I put it? Like, it just felt below The Simpsons. Like,
When
is it-
Milhouse is explaining it and he's like, they've turned into vampire aliens.
Yeah.
we're through the looking
Yeah, but
glass,
even then,
people.
it wasn't as kind of like graphic in nature as this was. I don't know how to explain it. It
No,
just
I
didn't
know
feel
exactly
like
what you mean, Tom.
Simpsons.
Because it's no longer like
And then I heard
like
they made Lisa
underhanded.
ultra woke too.
No, but it's like, I know what you mean though, because that's what exactly like what Family Guy and all these other shows do now. It's like everything's overt. There's no like subtext where you're like, okay, I understand what it's being talked about, but kids can also watch it and they won't have any idea what the fuck's being talked about. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because you're
Like,
right. There was a few episodes where both Homer and Marge had their fidelity questioned, right? Like they were going into these situations where, there's a whole episode where the picture of Homer gets out and Marge gets upset because he's dancing with the belly girl. And then you have the episode with where she meets the one guy, the bowling instructor.
That's with with Albert Brooks. He plays the
Yeah, with
bowler.
Albert. What she kind of
right.
was basically a cast member for the first season, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Then there's the one where they started having sex in public and getting
oh
in
yeah,
trouble.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they got caught at the Super Bowl.
When was this one? Because see, this one I don't remember. Maybe this was after the one that I'm talking about, or how long ago was this
That
one?
was like
This was
8 or
before the
9.
Simpsons film. Yeah.
Yeah, this
Okay.
was season 8 or 9. That was when I was still watching it.
Maybe I vaguely remember. I don't know, but like
There was
I
the one
just-
where they're at the golf course and there's like two guys sawing a log that's hanging over by
Okay, I
Homer's
kind of
genitals,
remember that now.
and then like some pinwheels in front of Marge's bits.
Well, yeah, I remember that now. Of course, the first time where Bart was conceived in the golf course, that I remember.
Yes.
But they don't really
And-
show much other than them kissing in that scene, so yeah.
That's true. However, there's the one episode where I think they talk about Maggie being conceived and Homer is enjoying himself as a sperm. And the kids are like, that's too graphic.
Yeah, that was great.
Wow, that was a little bit like
Ew.
Look Who's Talking, but yeah.
Ew.
When they're all like bumping against each other and it's like, don't.
Yeah.
Oh, good old Simpsons. That was good. That was good times. That's how
Yeah.
I grew up. The
So
Simpsons. was-
I got to ask, though, what was wrong with Mickey 17? Right.
Yeah, good question.
Depending on who you ask, I think anybody here see it? I know Paul Chatto talked about it at length.
I
haven't
haven't
seen it yet.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen it, obviously.
I guess the general consensus is interesting idea, badly executed. The story didn't make any sense. The villain didn't make any sense.
I heard it was
Pattinson
like woke, and Chris Gore said something about it was attacking Christianity. So I was like, what?
Well, and what Price was
Yeah.
saying, and you guys were talking, they were talking the other night on Mead, was like basically, it doesn't know if it wants to be a comedy, a sci-fi, suspense, or action.
Right.
And then, so the tone's all over the place. And then I guess like halfway through or part of the way through, the female becomes more of the protagonist than Mickey 17 does. So it's like,
Yeah, Mickey 17 doesn't have an arc, and the girlfriend steps in and tries to like do the big speech at the end rather than him.
Oh,
And,
Like the
no.
South Korean film.
So it's like
yeah,
the-
and Mark Ruffalo is like a terrible actor, and his character makes no sense.
and he's
yeah.
trying to be Trump. Yeah.
I didn't even know Mark Ruffalo was in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and Tony, was it Tony Collette as the
Yeah, Tony
as the
Collette's
wife?
in it.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
she's
like
like
the-
she's like the Lady Macbeth or whatever.
It's the typical subverting your expectations, like The Mandalorian, like Bo-Katan is now actually the Mandalorian, that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, it stole, according to the Chatto, it kind of stole
Yeah.
Mickey having an arc of personal development when somebody else comes in and kind of like steals the spotlight at the end.
Right.
To be clear, though, none of us have seen it, so we don't know.
Yeah,
No,
no, I mean,
We're just
ba-
going
well,
off of what we've been told. Yeah.
yeah. When I first saw the trailer, I thought, oh, is this a spin-off of Moon with Sam Rockwell, because the similar gimmick.
Well, and the
was in
premise
Love
that
that
seemed a
movie.
lot like The Day After Tomorrow is what the premise kind of sounded like, but instead of it being time travel, you just replace it with clones.
Right.
Well,
It
yeah,
sounded like, from the way they were talking, it even sounded like the clones do remember things from the other clones or something.
Well, yeah, that's what I said the other day. I thought it was going to be like Edge of Tomorrow, where like with every death he's learning something new, and then he gains some kind of knowledge or has
He
some kind
does,
of
but not in
development
the way
arc.
you said it. There's the way those
Right?
guys
Yeah, it's
made
not
it
a
sound,
productive narrative sense. It just So anyway,
I thought Script you saw. You didn't see it?
No, I was excited for it because I saw some preview footage for it, but apparently the entire third act falls because I thought it was a comedy. The way some of the trailers were a
So.
comedy.
Yeah, they're presenting it like
There's
a
a
comedy.
section where they're cloning Mickey, and the cloning is not a very easy process. Like his body's being jostled around on this thing all the time because I guess they're like kind of printing him printing him, biologically printing a copy of him or something of
Mhm.
that nature. And I'm like, oh, this seems like it's kind of trying to be a little satirical. And then you're hearing that they're kind of dropped the ball, and that Bo Hung Ying or whatever his name is kind of getting a bit more deeper into the class politics than what he's been doing before, because he's always addressed class politics, but now I guess he's taking certain extra elements of one side and reinforcing them.
I don't know how to feel
part of
about that
his
because I feel
stuff.
like people are way too sensitive nowadays. So
Oh,
I
definitely.
just feel like it's one of those movies I'm gonna have to watch for myself because a lot of people said the same thing about Parasite, and I thought Parasite was great.
I
So I
enjoyed
don't know.
Parasite.
Well, I'm okay if they do class stuff, but I abhor identity politics.
Yeah, identity politics is not good.
Yeah, and well, that's the other part too. Like class stuff can get very close to identity politics because you're basically dealing like, well, you have the upper class, the bourgeoisie, and then the proletariat, the working class, and there's exploitation. So if you're not playing it with nuance and just playing it like superficially, that's when it comes into identity politics. Now you're just bored.
Right.
So, I mean, and the fact of the matter is that unfortunately, a lot of the people that are getting some opportunities to craft these stories with directors or with studios as assignment projects are not well read or experienced enough to understand the nuance, to understand, hey, if you have this political ideology, you have to frame it in a way that's very accessible to everyone else, and that you're also steel manning both, if not every side of the argument there, so that you can exercise the most drama out of the story itself.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the measure of a man in TNG or something.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Tom has to leave us.
Oh, Tom, you have to go. That's too bad.
No.
Yeah, I was hoping to stay a little longer, but Pizza Hut sucks and I can't get up to work, so I got to go pick up my dinner.
All
Bye,
right.
Tom.
Bye, Tom.
Later, Tom.
And then I got Flashcast in a bit, so I mean, I might be able to pop back in for a little bit before, but hopefully if I get back in time.
Yeah, just pop
All
in.
right.
That's cool. All right,
See you
man.
later, buddy.
Take care.
Bye, Tom.
All right, so where were we?
I don't mean to rewind time. Well, I mean, I
Uh-oh.
wish I could.
You can do that? Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Nina Infinity
I
really
do have the
operates here.
power.
Yeah.
I kind of gave it away. But anyways, because we were talking about the Oscars before, and we just kind of talked about the movies. But just so you know, I felt like Conan was great.
Yes.
I thought Conan did a fantastic job as a host compared to Jimmy Kimmel and basically anybody that they've had since like Billy Crystal was the last good person that they had hosting it. So I
Oh,
hope
Oh,
they bring him
you
back.
you actually sat through the whole thing. I just
Oh
looked
yeah, I
up.
watched the whole thing.
Oh my God, I just looked it up pretty much before this stream.
Yeah, no, I watched the whole thing because we like my mom and I have like a tradition of watching it, and now we just have a tradition of watching it and making fun of it. It used to be like we actually, watched it and liked it,
Mhm.
but now we just watch it and make fun of it. And we've kept the tradition alive, and I don't want to that's one of those things I do with my mom. So I don't want to
Okay. Well,
not
that's
do it anymore,
understandable. Yeah, that's
You know,
understandable.
Conan approached it like an actual entertainer rather
Yeah.
than trying to do like some kind of, crusade or message, or thought that, and Conan is like at this point now more of a old school, just put on a show kind of guy than a lot of the other hosts that they've had in the past.
Well,
Exactly.
No,
And,
no
like,
no one's going to top Ricky Gervais though.
No,
No.
or Billy Crystal for his run, but yeah.
Yeah. It was but he was good, and like it was weird because like he even made a couple of jabs at Trump and like the establishment or whatever, but it was done so tastefully that it wasn't like in your face. You're like, oh, he's just making fun of politicians, like whatever,
Right.
you know. So it was like old school comedy where like, oh, you could just actually make fun of those people, but he also made fun of like Amelia Perez and that trans person, I forget their name.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he totally nailed him. It was funny. And so like that was refreshing because I think if it was like Jimmy Kimmel, like we would have never heard that joke,
Right.
So in that sense, I hope they bring him back, and I thought he did a good job.
I think they will. It also explains why on Conan's podcast he had like Ted Danson hosting it for several episodes because I think Conan and his team were writing the Oscar show.
Right.
Oh,
and
wow.
rehearsing.
Okay. It was funny because I heard him talk on the red carpet because I was watching the red carpet earlier while I was making dinner before the Oscars started. And then, like, he shows up and they're like screaming stuff at him, like, "Are you excited? Are you excited to be here?" And he's like, "I'm here, aren't I?" Like, like, what do you want me to say? Like, it's just like, "Yeah, I'm here, okay?" Like, whatever.
I was disappointed no one slapped anyone.
I know, right? I
know.
was waiting for the Will Smith. I got the slap heard around the world,
Right.
Well, I mean,
or some joke about it.
the closest we got was Adam Sandler grabbing Timothy Chalamet by the head and screaming his last name at him.
That's right.
Yeah, that was
Chalamet.
Chalamet. That was good.
Okay.
That was
Oh, he also made fun of Timothy Chalamet. Like he put up because he was like doing a bit about everybody's like actor portfolio, like from before they were famous, and like kind of making fun of them. And he put up like Zoe Saldana's and like everybody else's like headshots. And then he's like, "Here's Timothy Chalamet's," and it was like a womb picture.
yeah.
I was like, "That's funny."
Right. Oh, did you hear? Did you read that stuff about the new Harry Potter Snape?
Oh
Yes.
my
Yeah.
god!
It's so
yeah.
bad. Oh man. Why?
I can't believe they did that.
I'm just curious as to why J.K. Rowling signed off on that.
I know
Because J.K. Rowling is might be anti woke when it comes to trans issues, but she's complete identity politics elsewise.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah,
I don't think she would set her foot down on that at all.
No, she didn't have a problem with race swapping in the stage play for Hermione or anybody else. So I'm not surprised by this, but it's just one more eye roll.
Well, I
Yeah,
honestly
it was-
thought that they were gonna race swap Hermione because, like, she's got curly hair, and you can kind of get away with it. Like, I never thought that they would do Snape for fuck's sake.
And he
Snape,
looked so
like-
young. I don't know who that guy is, but he looked like he was 25.
Yeah, he looks young. I mean, I don't know. Snape, that
Like-
guy's got like really big shoes to fill. Also, it's not like this is the first
Yeah, I
time.
mean, he'll always be Alan Rickman.
Yeah, and the character. I mean, I'm not even a Harry Potter fan, but just like the whole purpose of the character is he's supposed to be foreboding. He's supposed to be intimidating. He's supposed to be somebody that you almost suspect, or it actually is a villain at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
You're
And
just
so
describing
you.
a typical black man to a bunch of these woke people.
Oh no! Oh my God! What have I done? Oh no! What have I done? No!
Show's getting canceled now.
I know, right?
Right.
It's yeah, but it just. Do we even have Harry yet? Like they haven't cast the kids yet. No, I don't think so.
I have not heard
I
of such.
Don't believe so.
No.
Yeah, they
That's the only
cast.
thing.
I think they cast this dude, and they cast Dumbledore, which is.
Yeah, Dumbledore is going to be
John
Lithgow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Lithgow's good, and they
And I
cast
like him.
McGonagall, and she looks ready for the part.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know they cast her.
Yeah, I forget. My brain wants to say it was Julie Christie, but I don't think it's Julie Christie. It was somebody else. Somebody who looks like her. I forget her name.
Everybody
Anyway.
said they should have casted Adam's. I was gonna say Adam Silver, but I have basketball in my mind. Adam Driver. On
Yeah, Adam Driver
as
would have
Snape.
made a great Snape. Sure.
Sure.
he definitely looked the part. The only reason I didn't like him was because he wasn't British. But then I was like, since they're not going with British actors anyway, so why
Right.
not? Why not Adam? He's a good
Yeah,
actor.
that's a good choice.
Yeah, Lithgow's the closest Lithgow's gotten to British is his Churchill turn on the Crown.
Which was great.
Yeah, especially what's her name playing the young queen, Claire Foy. Claire Foy is amazing. She and Matt Smith were absolutely amazing.
Oh, Latino Slant is in the chat. He's saying they cast Janet McTeer.
Janet McTeer, that's what it was. She always reminds me of Julie Christie, just the way that like her overall frame for some reason. Anyway,
Right.
I had to
yeah.
Google her because I don't know anybody.
Right. Oh yeah.
that's the right name.
Latino's in the chat, like you said. He couldn't make it. So
at the movies, oh my gosh, what movies are you watching?
What are you watching?
yeah,
what you
got to
seeing?
tell us.
Is it Mickey 17?
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably what he's watching.
Yeah, Mickey 17.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is out? See, that's the other thing about movies right now. Everything sucks. Like,
Yes.
Yes, yes.
That's the thing.
does anyone
And
ever
everything
wanna go to the
everything
movies?
is expected to suck as well. Like, oh, Fantastic Four, the Thunderbolts,
Well, this is the dumping season from January to mid March. Is usually like just get it out there. We don't
Yeah.
care about the quality, just get it out there.
Right.
And unfortunately, they start the summer season in March now with movies.
Oh,
which
no.
they've been doing this for like 7-8 years. It's always been stupid.
Hmm.
But they just kind of want to get people into the theater faster, which is ironic considering the fact that people just have no interest in going to the theaters unless there's a popcorn bucket involved.
Right.
Yeah, I
Oh, I see.
know. This popcorn bucket trend is so freaking stupid now.
Well, it's what the theaters have put together in order to get people into the theaters themselves, because they're the ones that are actually suffering worse than the studios, because they're the ones that are actually putting up front cash for a lot of these productions before they even get underway. So they need those productions to be really, they need them to be movies that people want to see and well done, so that they come into the theaters, buy the tickets, and 50% of that or so goes to pay off the debt the theaters invested into the film. The other 50% goes to the studios, and the faster that they can get what their investment back, which for like AMC or Odeon or whatever, that's probably like $10 to $12 million per feature film that they invest in. It's not a lot, but like when you have tons of markets throughout the entire world, it adds up to, a substantial sum.
Hmm.
So, for most theaters, like on the domestic side of thing, if a movie is like, for instance, like Captain America, Brave New World, for a handful of chains, they've made their money back on the investment they gave to Disney. And so they're kind of like in a good spot, financially speaking. But for Disney themselves and what they've used that money to invest in, they still have to, pay back that to the theater chains until they start to claim their own profit on that. And that usually doesn't last long unless the movie is able to stay in theaters a minimum of 6 weeks.
Right.
He's watching
what
Novocaine.
was the final tally on the Captain America thing?
Right now, I think
Oh.
it's sitting at like 370.
Well, I know domestically it just hit 170. I
Yeah,
don't know
because it's
about the rest of it.
170 domestically and 178 internationally.
Okay.
Right
Against
now.
a budget of what,
Yeah.
200, something like that?
Well,
an official
the budget.
So they
Yeah.
changed the name, and when you change the name, you change the LLC. So the current name of it, Brave New World, that's got a reported budget of 180. We don't know exactly how much they spent when it was New World Order, different LLC, and whatever they pulled from that and used in Brave New World, they can legally do. So we don't know the exact amount, but I mean, on the accounting side of things, from what's being reported, that is technically accurate, but they're just not taking into consideration the fact that it used to be New World Order, and that
And it was reshot 3 times, and God knows what else.
I don't
in
know
marketing.
about that part though. I know that there was 3 reshoots. I don't know if it was a full reshoot from beginning to end. That's the problem that I'm having trouble nailing down. Even with my buddy, my buddy, and also my cousin, who are editors, who usually work for Marvel most frequently, they are saying that they've only ever had to work on a couple of scenes for that film, and everything else that they did beforehand was identical to their previous.
With as late in the game as they brought in Giancarlo Esposito to be a major villain, and
who's in 3
thread
scenes.
that into, yeah, exactly. But I know, but at the same time, it just seems like they'd have to do a lot of rearranging on the back end too. I don't know. It seems like one big mess. I wonder if we'll ever find out what the
If you're
true cost
replacing a
was.
single actor who's only in 3 scenes, that is actually something you can do in like 3 days. That's not a huge reshoot problem. Like it isn't a huge reshoot issue. If you're talking about, like, let's say they reshot the scene where they try to assassinate Thunderbolt Ross when he's doing that presentation, that would be a bit more expensive because you have all those background extras to organize. You have the set that has to be rebuilt. And then you have the new actor that you've got to do it in. And you only really have to worry about the wide shots that he's there, or you can do what's called the green screen digital composite, where you just shoot, and they did this on Deep Space Nine back in the day, but you just shoot the one corner of the room where the actor is going to be, and you just composite him back in there. Again, that can be done pretty cheap. The other thing you also have to consider is where were those reshoots being filmed? If it was filmed in California, which is expensive to film, it means that they weren't very important, they weren't very long, and they got it done in California because it was faster to do than it would be to fly to Atlanta, Georgia, or fly to the UK and do it there for the tax breaks. So you got to kind of have to really scrutinize on this, because even though I'm aware that they've rewritten the film, they rewrote it before they did their first principal photography, and then some of the stuff that were reshot there were tweaks on the script as opposed to a complete revamp, as far as I know, and as far as I've been able to confirm from people that I know who get contracted to work on post-production. So I'm still up in the, I don't know how much they spent on reshoots. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 40 million overall.
What
But
would you?
I
What
know,
would be
I know
your?
that there's no way that they reshot that movie from beginning to end 3 times.
No, but what would be your guess as to how much the movie cost?
I would say on the conservative side of things, 200 even, and a little bit on the liberal side of things, maybe 225.
Right. Yeah. So that's 370. You said. Yeah, that's not really good.
It's not ideal, but again, it's also not Disney's money from their own coffers. Like, that's the other part too. What's really hurting Disney is the fact that their profit margin is not as high, and the profit margin is what gets them the higher deal when they do their pre-sales. Because I was talking on Midnight's Edge about this, is that whenever you're working for a company that has an annual budget, your goal is to hit that budget.
Right.
And if you don't hit that budget, then they're going to reduce your budget. But if you go over that budget, well, you have some play where you can say, well, we need more money. When you're dealing with pre-sales, you are proposing a feature film with an assurance that it's going to match previous financial returns of other films. So Marvel had this great stretch where they could essentially say, we average $1 billion at the box office for all of these Marvel films. And they just went hot and mean on a bunch of film markets to get as much money as they could. And when you get that much money, and you have a release schedule that is targeted for between 2 and 3 tentpole Marvel films a year, you then have to allocate that money that you pre-sold evenly across those, or appropriately across those 3 films. So if you get, say, $1 billion for like 4 films, you have to basically have around $250 million budget for $250 million budget films. Whether you spend all that or not is inconsequential. The whole idea is you have to just report that you've spent that much money.
Right.
And that's how you do it. But Disney and Marvel has had a steady decline of return on the box office since Endgame. And I suspect, because I've heard some other colleagues of mine make note of it, that the reason why you're seeing that Captain America had a reported budget of $180 million, and that the Thunderbolts also seems to be sub $200 million, as is the Fantastic Four, is because Disney was not able to secure the higher pre-sales that they had prior to Endgame, because they've had all those box office, those films have not hit the $1 billion box office mark continually. So as a result, they have to readjust their budgets and what they want to spend for those films. And what's strange is that even though they're slightly reduced budgets, the behavior is still the same, which begs the questions like, okay, well, was that the behavior is still the same, where they're shooting before they even have a completed script, or they're shooting a script that they know they have to go back to reshoots. Why is it that they're able to still keep it sub $200 million on this one production, but they've ended up to exploding to like 350 on another production? So that raises further questions as to how that works out. And that's something that is really tricky to lock down, because there's just so many new variables being brought in, and there's so many production houses and VFX houses that they're outsourcing and having it all done at the same time. And we find out that they're not just doing previs, but they're actually going as far as they can close to a final product before principal photography has even took place. And when principal photography comes in and they realize it doesn't match with the stuff they've already spent full market value on the compositing side, on the CGI side, on the modeling side, now they have to redo it all over again, and they have to do it in a shorter amount of time because the release date is just around the corner, which means that a CGI special effects company gets to charge a premium on top of that, because now all the resources are diverted into this one project when they're supposed to be, having 3 or 4 running at the same time, because that's a steady flow of income. It's really just a nightmare of horrible logistics on Disney's side of things, because they don't have that over at Warner Brothers. They don't have that over at Paramount, nor do they have it at Universal and Sony. It's only Disney's that's doing this stuff. So it's really, it raises a lot more eyebrows, and there's a lot more digging that has to be done.
Yeah. I don't see how they can continue doing it that way. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what about James Bond? Well, you hear about that, obviously. Amazon is going to take
Oh,
over.
yeah.
There was speculation. I saw that they wanted Christopher Nolan to direct.
I think I read that somewhere, but I think he's probably out because Amazon's involved.
You think so?
Well, there's a couple of directors out there that are bad-mouthing Amazon specifically because they got rid of Barbara Broccoli, as though Barbara Broccoli was some sort of savior for James Bond or something, and that without her involved, suddenly now it's not really James Bond, except Barbara Broccoli was the driving force for making Bond a ballless, whiny little bitch over the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, between Barbara Broccoli and Amazon, you got two different brands of poison pushing themselves into one IP. And so, it's like, which one is worse, I suppose, is the question. But anyway, they got rid of Barbara Broccoli by paying her off, and now it's just Amazon. So the expectation is you're going to have a bunch of spin-off stuff, a Moneypenny series, an M origin story, a Felix Leiter,
Oh, my God.
Popcorn holder or something, and just be...
And she sold it for cheap, too. If I had the Bond franchise and Bezos said, I want it, and money is no option, be like, okay, Bezos, how much do you have?
Yeah.
Right.
And if-
What,
and I want
do you
everything.
know
I
what
wouldn't
she
want-
paid?
It was
$1
like
billion.
$1 billion or something.
$1 billion. And it's like,
Okay.
Oh, I
James
would have
Bond-
held out. I would have held
Whoa.
out.
Yeah. Effectively marketing that alone for cars and watches and suits and pens and Mont Blanc and all the licensing and contracts you could do otherwise if you actually leveraged Bond like he used to be into being essentially a walking advertisement for masculine products, way more than $1 billion.
True. I mean, granted, it's probably what it was worth, but the thing is, it doesn't matter what it's worth. It matters how much are you willing to part with it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back. Tom, how you doing?
Hey, I
Welcome
figured I'd step
back.
in for a few more
How's your
minutes.
pizza?
Pizza,
It's not bad. Don't tell Paulie. Oh shit, he's in the chat.
pizza.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I didn't get Pizza Hut. I got a restaurant pizza because I'm like, fuck them. Their shit don't work, and I got to drive, so I'm not going to Pizza Hut.
I'm going to go get a Red Baron tomorrow to save myself the trouble.
See, yeah.
Red Baron pizza.
If I'd have had a frozen pizza on hand, this wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
about Bond though, I just really want them to cast Henry Cavill, and I'm glad that they asked.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
he would
for
be-
better or
he
worse,
would be the
the
best
Amazon-
choice.
The Amazon deal, we're at like a place where the chances of Henry Cavill being Bond are the highest they've ever been.
Exactly. So I'm like,
So-
let's go. But then my husband was telling me earlier today that he read something about how they're like really looking into like making it like an all-female thing, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like,
Oh, my God.
if they do that, like I'm
If
just
it's
gonna
not
die.
a porn, then it doesn't matter.
I mean,
Girl on
if they do
girl
a
action.
if they make it a period Bond series, like set back in the 50s or the 60s or something, then they could get away with everything, have the Cold War setting, make it all kind of make sense, and not have to try to do all the kind of crazy techno stuff, and keep it actually espionage and sort of low level and fisticuffs. That'd
That would
great,
be
but they're
kind
not
of
going to do it.
That would be kind of interesting though, because it's so boring with modern spy things. All they do is look at cell phones and screens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They're
exactly.
boring. That's boring. The other part too that I'd be worried about is that they try to make a Bond series like Mission Impossible, the feature films, where it's just
Yeah.
huge, elaborate stunts that don't quite fit
Yes.
with what Bond is doing.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
kind
Bond
of-
is about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I kind of like, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I kind of want them to stop making like a series of Bond movies and just focus on making single Bond movies. Like, just
Mhm.
make one. And if it's
Episodic.
good, then you can
Yes.
have another one. But
Yeah.
like, just make one great film. Like, we don't need to make a franchise of like, this guy needs to be the next Bond for the last 15, 20 years. It's like, just make one. Can you make one and like land it, like stick the landing? And then you can go from there.
Well, that's
Well,
how
yeah,
the
I
Bond
mean,
series used to be. You'd have these episodic one-off films that might have fringe references, maybe to something that happened previously, but otherwise it was just its own thing. You could drop right in. You didn't need to do some homework. It wasn't part of a large story arc like it was just some glorified streaming series on Amazon. And there you go. You got a really cool movie, and that's why fans get to debate. It's like, well, which was better? Was it The Living Daylights or was it License to Kill? Because they're both their own separate entities, and you can debate the merits of one versus the other, rather than having saying, oh well, because it was all part of one storyline. They're kind of all good. Like, no, just
that's why I didn't like the Daniel Craig Bond, because it was all like, like one flows into the other, and it was very Mission Impossible-esque, like Script Doctor was saying. And I didn't like that. And I think they should go back to just single
I thought they
movies.
were trying to make it more Bourne Identity, but Bourne Identity is basically Mission Impossible too. Yeah,
Mission Impossible was trying to be stunt and Bourne Identity meets Bond, and then Bond was like, let's try to be more Bourne Identity. And then when they failed at that, they then, I don't know where they went off the rails, but I got lost during Skyfall, and Spectre was just a snooze, and I didn't see the last
garbage.
one.
Inspector sucked, and then the last one was terrible, and then they just literally basically just
killed them off.
They shit the bed.
They were like the best part of that whole movie was like the Ana de Armas part, just because she had like a little bit of sex appeal, and we were all like starved for just a tiny bit of sex appeal. We're like, oh my god, there's a girl with boobs.
Right.
Like, oh my god.
But that principle that you mentioned there, Nina, is they should do that for all movies. They should stop with the fucking franchise. It can become a franchise organically, but just
you're talking about story dependency.
Just do good movies. Concentrate on the one you're doing. That's all it takes. Oh gosh,
no! Studios hate doing that these days because it's all about. It's actually the very things that Martin Campbell fought against when he was directing Green Lantern. Because when they were doing Green Lantern, Warner Brothers got so ahead of themselves, they greenlight the second movie before they'd even finished principal photography on the first. And you had Greg Berlanti, who was a hack writer, and his writing team, who are supposed to be helping Martin Campbell turn in new pages so that he can make a coherent, self-sustaining movie, but they weren't around because they were working on the sequel script. And so Martin Campbell is trying to figure out a way that's not going to violate WGA and DGA rules to try and make this piece of crap script he has work. Because remember, this is the guy that resurrected Bond twice with GoldenEye and with Casino Royale. And he is struggling to try and get Green Lantern, which, I mean, it's not a difficult character to nail if you have a good plot and you have a really charismatic cast, which at the time, everything kind of was working out that way. But he could not make that work because he had no support, because the studio decided we need to really expand our DC properties as quickly as possible, because we already have gotten wind that Marvel is kind of gearing up for something big.
Right.
And they basically kind of didn't even look before where they leapt, and everything just kind of collapsed in on itself. Like
Green Lantern could have been DC's Iron Man. Done right, Green Lantern really could have been the foundation for a good DC run, but they don't know what they're doing.
Well, the thing is, Warner Brothers and Kevin Tsuchihara and all them were just so eager of just getting to the finish line of the sequel and everything else that they weren't paying attention on the product at hand. And when Martin Campbell was raising his concerns, they went unanswered. And when Martin Campbell says, I need help to do something, you better be there to help him, because he probably has a solution, but he needs the okay from you guys to get it done. And because they completely shuttered him, it's the worst movie he's ever directed. And Martin Campbell has a pretty solid track record for films.
And you saw that mentality continue all the way up through Batman v Superman, where they just sped rush the Justice League, shoehorning everybody in a meaningless cameo, rather than doing individual character movies ahead of time to build up to that.
Actually, but
no, they took it all the way through, even to the Ann Sarnoff days.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, sure, they slowed down a little bit, but it was, and frankly, I believe the story I heard recently. I don't know if you guys heard this or not, but according to what I heard, Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca got chewed the fuck out for Joker 2. And I'm also hearing now, and it's pretty obvious that I think Pattinson confirmed it, that the Batman 2 script is still not done.
No, it's not done. It hasn't been done. They haven't even finished the first draft yet. This
movie is not coming out.
Letting you guys know on your show, because I was listening in on the commute. Yeah, Matt Reeves spent the last 4 years working on this script, and he's only completed 25 pages that he's turned into James Gunn and Peter Safran, who only liked about half of it.
Okay.
So it's really it's actually pathetic because Nat has not been working on anything else outside of being in a producer role for a couple of other smaller things, and there's no reason for him to have this level of delay. And part of me, I mean, I think Tom, you mentioned it too, is like I think part of the situation is that Penguin did way better than expected, and now he is like wondering how is he going to live up to that expectation.
Right.
And I don't think he's got the necessary tools for a Batman story to work within
Well,
that.
you're a writer. How do you fight writer's block?
By writing anything, just getting stuff out there, experimenting.
I'm sorry, but it's Batman. It's got 80 years of stories. You shouldn't have writer's block.
No, there's a lot.
Okay.
Like I like
Fair
what's
enough.
funny is that I have I recently outlined just for giggles a trilogy of Batman mysteries with 3 characters that have never been seen on screen before.
Mhm.
And I have exactly what those villains are trying to accomplish, how Batman gets involved, how it gets resolved, even with the climax. It's all laid out. They're all like 20 pages in length for outlines. And if I ever got the go ahead to be like, hey, put this, take one of those outlines and make it into a feature film, I could probably bang out a really solid first draft within 3 weeks. And then after getting a series of notes from the studio, I could probably incorporate those in another 3 to 6 weeks without much issue.
Right.
And that's just par for the course. Not factoring in the fact that I've been a Batman fan since I was a child, but also in the fact that I've actually read lots of other books that also deal with crime thrillers and mysteries and things of that nature. So much so that I've recently got I'm negotiating a chance to work on a really great screenplay with another writer. So, I mean, I clearly have the chops to do it. Whether I deliver satisfactory work is always going to be of the taste of the people that are hiring me. But I always make the effort to do the legwork, especially with this one where it's a book series I'm familiar with, but I haven't read everything of it yet. But I really want to because I've liked what I read so far.
Right.
And that's just part of the game. With Matt Reeves, I mean, he the guy, he came into Planet of the Apes after someone already has started it, and he kind of ran it to its course and fairly successfully by the studio standards. He then pitches the Batman, and it was like a runaway train. It was too long, bloated. The mystery was barely there. The level of detective work was kind of amateurish, and there was too much leaning on Alfred doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the brain side of things. And it had also had some stylistic views that had already been established by Christopher Nolan. So it just didn't feel like a really clever film. And in fact, I was one of the early ones to say it was probably the worst live action depiction of Batman we'd ever seen. And that is including Batman and Robin.
I kind of like the car, though.
Car's fine. But that car chase was actually pretty poor because it wasn't cut together properly.
No, I just mean the car. Like it was like
just the car. Yeah, it's a muscle car.
like a Charger or something. Like
something
a Dodge
like that,
Charger.
yeah.
It wasn't like a big tank. Although I love the tank too in Nolan stuff, but that was just I thought that was a nice touch, even though maybe the movie wasn't that great. But okay, nice car.
Yeah, and then the Penguin took that setting.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then the Penguin took that setting and actually did something interesting with it. I think that series was about 2 or 3 episodes too long, but otherwise it was relatively good compared to a lot of other things I'd seen. The only major failing plot narrative of the Penguin was why anybody after the first 2 episodes or something would ever trust Oswald with anything. Because every character that was just like, all right, I'll let you go off by yourself and do things on my behalf without any supervision. I'll totally trust you're going to do what you say. That part just made almost everything after about the 2nd or 3rd episode fall apart in my mind.
That's
But
one
other
aspect
than that,
of it. The other aspect.
that's only one. I could go on for a while, but that was the one thing that I kept running into as I was watching. It was like, why the hell are you even giving this guy an inch? You should have already shot him by now.
Oh, well, because that's one of the faults of that series is the fact that they make the universe bend to benefit the Penguin.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the problem. Is
that
it
is
very
Mary
convenient?
Stu writing, and the reason
Yes,
that
it
you're
was.
able to not recognize it as well is because some of the dialogue and also the relationship between Penguin and the kid were really
Victor.
compelling.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff worked. I mean, it was hidden. That's the thing. It was really relatively artfully hidden behind some good performances, some interesting character interactions, and some good stylistic stuff. But when you just actually paid attention to who was doing what and why and character motivations, most of it made absolutely no sense just to reach the very end, which is like, okay, well, you can go nowhere else with this character. A season 2 makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
So where do you go from here except start a new villain origin story, which I still think should be Two-Face, but that's a whole other thing.
I also think it's poor writing to have a conversation that yields a solution too easily. Like too many times Oswald comes in and says, "Hey, you're going to do this for me, and if you don't, this is what's going to happen." And for me, I'm thinking, no, you've made it too easy for that character to acquiesce to what Oswald wants when that character has clearly significantly more power than him. So no, this should be more of a battle of wits where Oswald is actually manipulating him to do what he wants in protest to what Oswald should be asking, because that's we have fun with wit and guile. He comes in there asking one thing, the guy says, "No, I'm going to do another," and then you find out that's exactly what Oswald wanted in the first place, because he knew what the deck he had, the hand he had in his cards, and the other guy basically just said, "Yeah, I want you to kind of fold," and he says the fold is only really just for me to make sure that you put in a higher ante on the next hand. and
the times where you do see Oswald do something quote unquote manipulative, it is so transparently manipulative that it doesn't make any sense. Like the part where Sophia discovers her brother, I'll just say for the sake of not spoiling anything, and immediately loses any suspicion that it was Oswald that had anything to do with it. So I was like, what? No, you just spent like 2 episodes with every piece of evidence falling into place, and then this, and then now I guess it's just not him. Okay, they're like, what?
Well, he would play that. He would play on that though. Like he would just kind of like play victim and be like, "What? I'm like I'm a cripple. Like I don't do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
but everybody knows he's a liar. Everybody knows he's a lying scumbag.
Not really, because he would lie, and then he would just kind of go to the next person, and then the other person wouldn't know what he had done to that person until like later on when everybody started clicking in, like, oh shit, he's been doing it the whole time. Like it wasn't. They didn't
it should
know
have been
about
like
the
Tulsa
lie.
King, where like Sly's character is always like one step ahead usually of everybody else, right? And it feels like a lot of the stuff that he has to facilitate, they set stuff up in advance to where he knows he can go certain places to get help, but everything doesn't come to him easily in that show. It feels like that's probably where it should have been more like that. From what it sounds like to me, I didn't watch Penguin though.
No, with Penguin, a lot of stuff does come easily. The conflicts you have are kind of fleeting. There's so many people that are just so into like follow him for reasons. Even Sophia, the fact that she trusts him at all, and when you find out that he was actually one of the key players that got her committed, just makes you go like, what the heck? There's no way, unless she was trying to play him, and I was hoping that was going to be the case, but it ended up not following out that way.
No.
I thought he was playing him for a while.
So I haven't seen it either, but do we have like a problem where, it really takes a smart writer to write a smart person? You think that's the problem, script?
There's an issue of that. I'll spoil it for you. There's this one part where it's Penguin is fighting Sal Maroni. They're physically fighting. And Sal Maroni is getting the upper hand on Penguin, and he's going to kill him. But then Sal Maroni suddenly has a heart attack and dies.
Okay.
Yeah, that is bad writing.
Yeah, that was annoying.
You just don't do that at all. Like,
that's crazy.
Especially considering the fact that Sal Maroni is like 25 years older than the Penguin, and Penguin's like supposed to be like 40. It should be a lot easier of a fight for Penguin to do.
But he was a cripple.
So,
so what?
But a heart attack.
He's still younger, and he's still tough. He's still relatively tough.
He could barely move.
Has a limp that he can walk. Sal Maroni also got stabbed in the gut.
I know, like that whole thing was that the heart attack was dumb. I will say this though, I did appreciate the Persian representation, so I'm not gonna lie, that was great. They actually did their obviously Persian people worked on that show because the details that went into the Persian representation was on point. I was very impressed.
All right.
Yeah.
I saw myself.
No, for all its For all its faults, I like the setting. I like that world that they established in a lot of ways, even if the story was kind of herky-jerky here and there. So seeing more stories set in that kind of Gotham would be interesting without it turning into Gotham, if you know what I mean. Not too cartoony.
It had problems, but like honestly, the last shot of the show made the whole thing like okay, because I was like,
Well, it also felt like that they had to.
Oh well.
Yeah, they had that last shot in mind ahead of time, and they had to work their way towards that the entire deal.
Yeah,
But,
you could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was great. It was a great shot. It was a great ending.
Very disturbing.
I'd love to see. Yeah, if they're going to do a sequel, I'd say they do Harvey Dent. They have a legal procedural a la Law and Order with
They're
some
not gonna do
episodic
it-
episodes.
They're not going to do a season 2
I
until
know,
they do
I know,
Batman 2, which
I know.
apparently is not happening according to the script.
I'm just saying.
Again,
I'm just saying.
Batman-
Two-Face is one of my favorite villains, so I just wish they'd do that.
Well, the Batman 2 has been delayed 3 times officially. I would not be surprised if it gets a 4th delay.
Well, Robert Pattinson said, like, bro, you hired me as a young Batman. Now I'm going to be old Batman by the time this shit's done.
Yeah, that's his way of saying the fucking script ain't done. Hurry up, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's only a couple years younger than I am. and
So he is going to be old Batman.
yeah,
He's probably tired of it jerking around his schedule a little bit too, I bet.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I would be
Because that would be
surprised.
annoying as an actor because you're like, okay, well, I'm Batman, but like I have all these other jobs, and then I don't know if it's going to
Well,
line
he probably
up with the
set time
that-
initially aside for like this next year because they were supposed to start shooting, I think, this
Right.
summer or whatever.
This summer, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So
they
I-
probably said, "Oh, we got to move it off because Matt's not done writing it yet." So
Well,
Yeah,
not
I
only
would be
that,
annoyed.
it's not enough that he's done writing it. It still has to get a signed off approval from James Gunn and Peter Safran, who have got
Technically,
this
yes.
mandate that has
Yeah.
said they're not greenlighting a single project if the script isn't good or isn't ready. And what's fascinating is that some of the stuff that they had in the coffers that hasn't been officially greenlight but have been announced are now on the back burner because they said, yeah, the drafts that came in, they're not ready. We still need to work on them. So Batman Brave and the Bold has been pushed aside. There's another project that was pushed aside, and they've actually brought up the Clayface movie first because
I
they
was
said
gonna
that
say, yeah.
that came in and was phenomenal. So we'll see how that plays out. And I think even the Cape Crusaders one might be on a delay too because it's an animated film, but they haven't confirmed that it's going to be they've started.
Supergirl, I think, is the other one that's ready to shoot. If I'm not
Well, they've already
mistaken.
started. They already started.
Did they already
shooting it,
start? Okay.
Yeah, about a month ago. They're almost finished.
Right, but that's the way to do it, though. I mean,
Yeah,
don't-
exactly.
Don't try to churn out all this bullshit slop.
I don't know if they know how to stop doing that at this point, though.
Well, I mean, right now they're surprisingly disciplined at DC for that because even though they have that slate for their gods and monsters, they've been surprisingly conservative with what they're doing. Like Lanterns, they spent a good long time trying to get Lanterns in the position that it is now, and they've got their 2 Green Lantern characters, and it looks like it's going to be based a little bit off of the Green Arrow Green Lantern thing with some other new elements peppered through because it's like a journey across America, I think. And remember, this is DC's America, not current day America. That's actually one thing James Gunn has kind of made official so far is that it's not current day.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, yeah. He hasn't done anything to elude direct correlation yet. And so, yeah, like it's surprisingly disciplined because the only feature films that are on the slate that we know for sure are coming out is Superman and then Supergirl. And that's it.
Well, that's great.
And then the other stuff is their streaming stuff. So like even Waller has been on delay because they haven't gotten that script right, and they finished shooting Peacemaker season 2, so we're waiting for that to be released. And then after that, it's going to be the Lanterns streaming series.
Yeah, I mean that's good. I like discipline.
Yeah,
Should-
I mean,
should have more of that.
comes down. Yeah, it all comes down to the
You like
execution.
discipline?
Did they stick the landing? Did they stick what they needed to do with Superman to make themselves so confident that Supergirl is going to be?
We're getting mixed things out of the test screening that just happened, but the fact that like Jeff Snyder said that it was positive, I think is a good sign because he's somebody who's had a hate boner for James Gunn since forever.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, he said it was positive. Some of the other people I've heard that have seen it have said it was really good. Only certain people that seem to lean a little bit towards another quote unquote director seem to be pushing that it's in trouble and there's massive reshoots, which is funny because they've only done a couple of pickups that they've done in at Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank. They haven't, which means that again they're doing it.
Yeah,
on
I
a
haven't heard
cheap and
shit
on the
about
flip.
reshoots. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Right.
these is not reshoots. These are pickups. These are like, oh, we need a close-up shot of a fist. Well, we get the stunt guy in there. We throw him onto the shirt for the Superman costume, and we get the close-up of the fist coming in to whatever. It's like, yeah, they can shoot that in a hallway at Warner Brothers Studios if they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking like Captain America 4 level reshoots here exactly.
Or I would go so far as Dial of Destiny reshoots.
Or even that. Well,
Oh,
that was-
yeah.
we still
Right.
don't know the extents of that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
We just know that there was a tit for tat. And, I mean, if anything, we were reminded this week by that Powerpuff Girls thing coming out that
Oh,
the
jeez.
studios will lie to you. And 9 times out of 10, if you haven't figured it out by now, when we're telling you something, it's the truth or it's rooted in truth.
I watched that thing on the Internet Archive, and I was like, "What am I looking at?"
What was that?
Well, I just use that as an example. Okay, so CW was going to do
yeah.
a live action Powerpuff Girls like sequel show.
Okay.
And the show was set up in a way that the cartoon was based on the real them, right? Like, so they're the real Powerpuff Girls. The cartoon was fake. Now we get to see them like 10 years after their heyday, and they're all grown up. And of course, they're race swapped, and one's an alcoholic whore. It's like, I mean, it's just at first you're looking at it going,
That
okay,
was
this
a
could be,
nightmare.
yeah, this could be funny as like a SNL skit. But it just kind of came off as like cringe as fuck because
It
it
was
basically
so
is true.
cringe.
And people were reporting on the original script that got leaked out. I think maybe even you may have sent that to me, script, if not.
I definitely sent that to you. I was actually
gonna
probably
say,
one
I
of
was-
the first ones that sent it to you, but I was not the one that officially leaked it.
Yes. So
'Cause
anyhow,
I sent it
like,
to you before it got leaked. Like, that's
yeah, they
the-
tried denying a bunch of shit about that script, even though some photos had leaked out, and they ended up canceling it quietly in the background. Well, this trailer that come out was like a 3-minute long. It wasn't even really more. I'd call it more of a
It's a sizzle reel.
sizzle reel. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. It was more of a sizzle reel than a trailer, and there's a bunch of bits in there that basically confirm the script that Script had sent me. So,
Hey, I'm really, really sorry to interrupt, but I actually
Yeah, you
do
gotta
have to
run.
go. So, thank you, Undoomed, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure hanging out.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Great
I'll see
having you
guys
here.
next time. Bye, you guys. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
but yeah, so one of the funny lines in the trailer though was about how they supposedly race swapped her in the cartoon,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And also the professor, they race swapped him in the cartoon.
Yeah,
What was it? The gender normative outfit or something? Was that the?
yeah.
other
Supposedly,
line?
I don't know. Yeah,
Oh my God.
funny is
The
that they actually
always
shot
with
two
the identity politics.
Yes. Oh man, it was something else. If you haven't seen it, you
so
can
yeah, this
find it
was
pretty
done like
easily
3-4 years ago. I think is what Script was about to say. So yeah,
It was done when Greg Berlanti was still out on the lot at Warner Brothers because he
Yeah, it was a
one of the
while ago.
producers for it.
Yeah.
But they actually shot 2 pilots because the first one was terribly received, and they went back to try and shoot it again. And yeah, I never got the script of the reshot pilot, but yes, the footage that was leaked of that sizzle reel definitely lines up with the screenplay that I got my hands on many, many years ago. In fact, actually, the script that I have, I'm looking at it right
but the whole
now.
point of that I was just saying is they
2021.
will lie to you. Is my whole point. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's true.
And it was written by Diablo Cody, who also sucks, and Heather Rignier. And
Why do I know Diablo Code? Why do I know that?
She
name?
wrote Juno, that Jason Reitman
Oh,
directed. She
Yeah.
also wrote a couple. I think she wrote Jennifer's Body and a couple other things. She's a former stripper who became a screenwriter
Right.
because she actually aped a better writer's dialogue and was cheaper.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wait, what was Juno?
Juno was when Elliot Page was Ellen Page. She gets
And got
knocked up,
pregnant.
and we wait 90 minutes for her to hand over the child to Jennifer Gardner, who she determined in the first act was going to get the baby in the first place.
And Michael Cera was the father, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind of movie was it?
It was
comedy?
a quirky indie film
Oh,
that
yeah, okay. That
has
I've probably
J.K.
just
Simmons threatens to punch a kid in a wiener because he knocked up his daughter.
okay. No, I've probably never seen that. I just remember.
It's a waste
I
of
must have seen the poster or something because I remember the title.
Yeah, it's a big orange poster. Ellen Page at the time has got that green and white striped T-shirt and big belly on the front.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it had a charm to it, but it was actually a waste of time because it's like, oh, we're waiting for her to give birth for 90 minutes because she's made her decision in the first act, and there's no conflict for her really, other than, oh yeah, do I like the guy who impregnated me or not? I don't know. And
Great.
just-
That sounds
Yeah,
like
it was a pretty bad movie.
great fun.
Although everybody loved it in Hollywood.
Of course.
Yeah. And I've seen pictures of Diablo Cody. I can understand why she was not a stripper anymore. She did not have the goods.
Okay.
Yeah, she looks like she'd be like an airport, the strip club outside the airport type of thing.
No.
That quality.
Or Lot Lizard, maybe?
Is that a cesarean scar? No, some guy stabbed me. Okay, yeah,
Ah.
that type of performer.
Holy shit. So what's this shit about Blake Lively?
Oh, God.
Oh, geez.
How much
I
time
got-
do you have? Because I got to go soon, too.
I got something for you on that one. Hold on one second here. How about there? I'll share
The
my
short
screen.
version, though,
cooked this
is
up.
basically
hold on.
that Blake Lively was in this movie with Justin Baldoni. And she's basically trying to usurp control over the film's rights from Justin Baldoni, it seems. And they had a bit of a back and forth, I guess, behind the scenes or what have you, that has now spilled out into the news. And if you want to elaborate more than that, go ahead.
Yeah, so
it's
Justin
been-
Justin Baldoni's a dyed-in-the-wool feminist, and so he bought the rights to this book, which was It Ends With Us, which is this sort of like domestic abuse kind of sob kind of story. I actually read the book long before it became a movie, just randomly back in like 2019 or something, and I didn't find it very convincing as a storyline, but it's about a toxic relationship and a lady that's involved with a guy who's abusive and everything. Anyway, so he bought this book. It's about female empowerment after a fashion, and so he took this book and he optioned it for movie rights and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he used his own production company and his own money and his own name and everything to get this thing going. But he needed a name for it, and so he ended up with Blake Lively wanted to get involved. And then all hell started breaking loose because Blake Lively started leveraging herself into the production beyond the role of simply an actress.
Okay.
She started trying to rewrite the script. She brought in her husband. She brought in Taylor Swift to pressure him into different things. She put herself into the editing room to make her own edit. And it's all this chaos. And purportedly, it was all done in order to get Blake Lively a producer's credit. What's it called? Script? You get officiated in the Producers Guild or something?
Yeah, it gives her producer credit, and she gets locked into the PGA. And on
Right.
top of that, she was also trying to do it to essentially take the rights of the book away from Baldoni's company and
Yes.
appropriate it to herself, to her own company. Now, the
Right.
irony is that everything that she did is the reason why It Ends With Us was so well received, because the changes that she made, audiences actually liked. But the tactics that she used to get that much power are incredibly concerning.
Well, and that's
Well,
still questionable on the behalf of the part of supposedly his cut tested better, but I get what you're
Right.
saying. It was still a hit at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter.
I thought they went with his cut and not her cut by the time they went to the theaters.
As far as I heard, it was her cut that was what.
Well, I know that she used her husband to get her cut put before test audiences, but I thought his tested better. I mean, maybe they went with hers. I thought that his was his
But
one out.
Yeah, I'm
kinda-
not even clear on that part either, but yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of hold did she have? Like how did she manage
Well,
to do that?
Him acquiescing. I mean,
Yeah.
Baldoni. There's
She took
there's,
advantage of him being a feminist.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then,
He
and then when the relationship had deteriorated to the point where they clearly weren't communicating anymore on a professional or personal level, and then the movie was coming out, everybody was noticing they were giving each other the cold shoulder, and there was some back and forth on the red carpet between the stars and the paparazzi that was kind of giving everybody the hint that something was going on. So they just started running with it, I believe. Okay. And then Justin Baldoni knew that she was going to come at him with some sexual harassment or whatever case. So he pre-sued her, and then yeah, and so that's where it all started. And then it goes from there, and then she sues him back, I guess. So he's suing both Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and her production company, I think is the whole situation. And basically accusing them of trying to take his idea and falsely, dragging his name through the mud. I'm trying to think of the exact things that he's claiming, but that's kind of how it works out. And everything, slander, defamation, and all that kind of defamation, I think is what he's going for. Yeah, basically, because then she come around and now claiming sexual harassment charges on him and that he was being creepy and weird on the set. Well, then of course, left and right, you got people releasing texts and all this stuff, and then you come to find out that Nice Pool is supposedly based on Justin Baldoni. And then once you start reading the text, you're kind of like, oh shit, I think Ryan did do that too. And Ryan seems like the kind of person that the more he doesn't like you, the more nicer he is to you. If that makes sense. Like if you're somebody he has to work with, clearly, because you could tell he's just fucking with this guy after a while through the text. Okay. And they have some weird back and forth. And there was some strange conversations between Lively and Baldoni. And don't get me wrong, this guy is clearly one of these wackadoo feminists, but what a lot of people are seeing is she's trying to pull like an Amber Heard on him, and it's not working because all the stuff that's coming out is just making her look bad or making her look like the liar for the most part, from what I've seen so far. Now, I actually wish Nina was here because the girls dive into this almost every week on Toxic Femme, and they know more about it than I do, and the only reason I know what I know is because of them. I didn't even know what the fuck a Justin Baldoni was until
sounds like a really gay sandwich.
Yeah, it sounds like a sad sex toy is what it sounds like.
Well, I did a TEDx. He did a TEDx several years ago, and I did a TED Excellence with Kurt Metzger, watching him on that one, and that's on my channel. And so I knew who Justin Baldoni was ahead of time. So when I heard these things, my first thought was, do we have another feminist in name only who's actually some kind of creep behind the scenes? But as the story came out, it's like, no, it looks like he got completely raked over the coals by a power-hungry harpy. So,
right.
But yeah. Anyway, when I saw the poster for their new movie,
go down. But it's like, he didn't really do anything wrong. She's the one being. And what's funny is some of the things that she pulled on him were similar things that Ryan Reynolds pulled on Rob Liefeld, and I don't think he's drew comparisons yet. Because that was the other big thing is he got ghosted out of the premiere and had to have like his own premiere thing and stuff like that, and that's the same thing that happened to Rob
Well, yeah, Baldoni was he was exiled to a basement or something during the premiere of his own movie.
Really?
Yeah, and it was this is his production company. He was directing it. He starred in it. This was his baby. This was his
How is that
his
possible?
deal. And well, it was just again because he took the initial wedge was I was about to say Amber Heard. Blake Lively framed herself as a victim from previous productions of having been undervalued and mistreated and everything. And Justin, being a dyed-in-the-wool feminist, said, "Oh my God, that's terrible! I can't believe people would do that to you. I'm so sorry. You won't experience that on my set. You won't have that happen with this production." And that just sort of like got the foot in the door. And then incrementally, she kept pushing herself into different areas of the production that she was not actually supposed to be a part of. And he just kept giving more and more leverage, and eventually it turned into a thing, and that's where you're at now.
Well, she's just playing the role of a typical Hollywood producer. I'm sorry, like there's a lot out there that'll get involved in the very minimum of capacity, and as soon as they realize that, this might be a hot item, they start clawing their way deeper and deeper into the production to eventually take it over and squeeze everyone else out.
Yep.
And she played that role surprisingly well, I would say. For her, and also it helps that she has a very a relatively important husband who has garnered a lot of success, mostly with how he's able to market films as opposed to the films he does, because again, he's been in a lot of bombs and he's been in a few hits, but the hits that he has have resonated enough to the point where people do reach out to him and his production company for market strategies.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the way it works here. What's different between Blake Lively and Amber Heard is that at no point is Blake Lively sleeping with Justin Baldoni. To get
No,
a house.
No,
no,
no.
there's no
The,
shitting on the
crap in
bed or
bed,
anything like that.
anything like that.
It's just the amount of like lying
just-
that seems to be going on and projecting or not projecting.
Well,
but,
also the trying to. I think the part that goes beyond here is the active work to destroy his reputation.
Yes,
and
yeah.
in a vindictive way. It's so if she was just taking over the production, it'd just be like Hollywood gossip mongering forever. But then it became public. She started accusing him of sexual harassment on the set and then manipulating information going to the New York Times. The
Right.
New York Times reprints something without getting all the context. And Justin Baldoni's like, no, that's
a
defamation.
lot of
That's all
similar
lies.
plays. Yeah,
But
Yeah,
this is all
exactly.
coming as a reaction to Baldoni's initial lawsuit, right? If I'm not mistaken, if the timeline's correct, like he sued her, and then now she's just letting all this out, hoping that it'll actually make her the sympathetic party in it.
that's
but
kind of my
the
understanding. I
opposite?
think
Yes.
they're counting. I don't know. Maybe you're right because I don't know if maybe they haven't filed a countersuit yet. I thought they did, but I'd have
Yeah.
to look. I've not been keeping that much track of it.
Because
So.
the way that I'm
but I do
looking
have
at
to
it,
run,
like if
sadly.
Baldoni was the inciting incident, then he brought all this on to himself, and she's now just trying to use it to take advantage.
My
him.
understanding is that a lot of it was incited from the premiere because they were taking note that he was, having his own separate thing, and there was clearly some kind of animosity between them. And I think that's what happened. And I think he heard from somebody that she was going to do this to him. That's
Right.
my understanding. I don't know 100%, but I do have to run, unfortunately. But Undoomed,
Bye,
it's been
Tom.
fun to hang out with all these smart gentlemen and, of course, the lady earlier. But
Yeah,
I feel
thanks,
like I'm way
thanks,
out of my league.
thanks a lot for showing up, man.
I appreciate you having me. Take care, guys.
Appreciate
Bye,
it.
Tom.
Ever do this again, just let me know.
Take care.
All right.
Bye. All right. I guess we got like 5 minutes left, and we done a cool 2 hours.
Cool.
Because you got to take off too, Scribe.
I mean, relatively. I mean, it's not a hard line 8 o'clock, or my time, but yeah, it's relatively soon. Yeah.
Right. All right. So, do we have any other interesting news this week?
How are we going to solve Ukraine?
I don't think you can.
We're just
Either way,
yeah.
they've lost territory.
Yeah, exactly.
we're just gonna take off and nuke the site from orbit.
Oh, please no. That's what we don't want to have happen.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not something you solve over a 2-hour stream.
Oh, I got a question for Script Doctor since he's a native son over there. How much does Canada actually hate us right now?
They don't hate the United States. They just hate the stupid tariff policy because they're like, we know what you're doing, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's worse is that our political representatives don't know what Trump's doing, and they're acting just as stupid. So there's a lot of eye rolls going around throughout the country about this. I will say it is kind of funny to see this this really small movement for Alberta to separate from Canada, which unfortunately in our Constitution cannot happen
Right.
at all. So it's really a lost cause. But I've been more of the party saying, no, you don't want to separate because, one, you can't. But what you can do is you can set up a provincial constitution, and then that can do the very thing that was supposed to have happened in 1920, but didn't, just because premiers at that time did not want to risk relinquishing power, more so power to the people, even though this was something that was put forth during Confederation, like another 60 years prior. So yeah, like no promises going anywhere. I'm more of the thing. I'm playing it on and be like, yeah, let's make us the North Star state. Actually, I want to go further. I think we should be states 51 through 60, just because it's a nice round number, and then you get 3 extra territories, which would be the Yukon Northwest Territory and none of it. And even our smallest province is bigger than Rhode Island. So
Yeah, I never really understood Canada writ large as a state. I thought, well, you'd at least just incorporate Canada into the U.S. and have the provinces become states.
yeah, and it's far simpler. Like
Yeah.
the structures there literally does not take much in changing the parliamentary system into the constitutional republic that you guys have. It's actually it'd be quite simple because there's so much overlap, because both of our forms of government are alarmingly simple. Actually, it'd be better if you guys had a bit more of a parliamentary system, because that would make the electoral college far more easier to understand for people.
Yeah. Is
And
there
you'd
much of a
still have the
popul
president as an
is,
office.
is there much of a population that's even amenable to the idea? I mean, I think it's science fiction personally, but I mean, is there much? Are there many Canadians, do you think, that would actually say, yeah, sure, why not? We'll become part of America.
There's some that would, but the fact of the matter is the only resistant to it is the loss of Canada as an identity.
Right. Okay.
Right,
Because
but if we're talking percentage here, I mean, I would guess that it's a overwhelming majority who wants to just be Canada, right?
yeah, definitely. But the other part too is that even for decades, Canada has actually been trying to become more of a self-sustained, freedom first government, because free first country with smaller government, because we actually got really close to that in the 90s for a period. And there's a lot of people on the West Coast who don't want to believe that, and that's because they're in the province of British Columbia, which is the most corrupt province in Canada. So they don't really want to see reality, nor do they even have a good work ethic. I know, because I've spent the last 2 months trying to hire people from that province to work in a subsidiary office out there, and not a single one of them could stand the basic needs of a work ethic that you get in Hollywood, let alone at a Starbucks. So, I mean, if that's representative of the population, it's like, sorry, the people that do have great jobs that are working hard there, they're the few and far between from the rest of the populace that's probably underneath a bridge, somewhere, or being kicked out of Panda Place over on Vancouver because they're a bunch of junkies. But no, like for instance, like Canada's origins is that our first government, when we were formed, was a conservative government. It was a very corrupt conservative government.
Okay.
So much so that our first prime minister lost a re-election to another prime minister, and the populace was so disappointed with that prime minister, they decided, let's get the first prime minister, John A. Macdonald, back. Like that, let's get the more corrupt guy back, because we'd rather have him. And then after that, we ended up getting an opposition party called the Reform Party, which its mandate was for small government, controlled spending, efficiency, and more power to the people. And that party was renamed the Liberal Party, and it had been that way up until 2003. And it hasn't been that way since. And unfortunately, for a majority
is that Trudeau's party?
that, Trudeau has taken over that party, yes.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is that the integrity of that party did falter when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was prime minister, because he abused a little bit of his power at that time because of the terrorist attacks that are occurring in Quebec. And the party kind of galvanized itself with Jean Chrétien. I know a lot of people don't like him because he has a couple of scandals. However, he's the only political leader to have never lost an election, which means that people liked him a lot. And he also got rid of our deficit and our debt, and we had a $7 billion a year surplus after the first few years of his time in office. And then the Conservative Party got in and squandered all of that and ruined all those programs, and then put us into a massive amount of debt, which we're still trying to pay off today. And the Liberals coming in after Harper came in only expanded on that debt. So we end up seeing a mono party between the two big parties occur in real time between 2003 and 2015.
Okay.
But you also have to realize that there are 3 generations of Canadians that still believe that the current day Liberal Party is still the Liberal Party it was when it was formed and how it had been for a century.
Yeah.
And breaking that shell has been incredibly difficult, because when Stephen Harper took over office, he did some clever investments into CBC, turning it more into a propaganda wing. And then when Trudeau got into office, he tripled down on that. So now you have a state-run service network that used to actually challenge the state and now cannot. Because even back in the day when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was facing his controversies, it was the CBC and smaller networks saying, we think what you're doing is unconstitutional. Right. And they were still allowed to operate. And he didn't do anything to kind of threaten them as far as the records currently show. And they were still there to criticize and point out his faults.
Does the Liberal Party own part of the CBC? How does that work?
The CBC is a government-funded network. So technically the people of Canada own it.
Technically
Technically they do, but all the funding comes by way of the federal government.
Okay, so it's kind of like
Um,
a NPR thing.
kind of like an NPR thing. The only caveat, and this was up until Prime Minister Mulroney got involved, because Prime Minister Mulroney started cutting a bunch of funding to the CBC, and the CBC, as a result, had to try and create programming that they could sell internationally to make up those funding deals, and they had a difficult time doing so because they did not have the power, like the physical, like power generators and stuff, to film shows the way that the Americans would film them. Therefore, the visual quality would be atrocious, and nobody would want to buy it. Then, when they finally did manage to get an investment when Jean Chrétien got in office, they expanded on that stuff and they tried to create more accessible sitcoms and shows of that nature. One of the big ones that blew up was called This Hour is 22 Minutes, which is a satirical comedy show started by Rick Mercer and three others. And it was huge. And it was great. And it made fun of everybody on the political spectrum, too. And in fact, they even got interviews with politicians of high power, just hanging out and doing stuff like going to a spa. There's one famous interview that Rick Mercer got with Prime Minister Jean Chrétien where they went to a Harvey's restaurant and just talked for an hour. And this was happening at the same time that Paul Martin was kind of achieving a really important aspect in Parliament for a deal. And Jean Chrétien's stunt there kind of like took all the attention off of Paul Martin and back onto him. So he was a really good navigator of politics, even though he had a couple of scandals, one of which was strangling someone that threw a pie in his face. And our Secret Service had to protect the person being strangled from our prime minister, just to show you how based he was back in the day. So yeah, it was been a mess. But then we had this. There's a regime change that happened at CBC a couple of times, and what ended up happening is they got a new mandate that said it's too difficult for us to produce shows and sell them internationally. So what we are going to do is we're just going to do everything we can to make sure we get the maximum amount of funding from the federal government, so we don't have to worry about that. So they decided to be a network that pulled themselves out of the competition, and this was happening at the same time as networks like CTV. Space, the Imagination Station, which is now called CTV Sci-fi, Rogers channels, and Kojiko, and a whole bunch of other affiliates were starting to beef up their networks and make content and sell internationally. And so yeah, they ended up gutting themselves to the point where they became the stooges of the federal government, as opposed to what it used to be, which was like, we are the taxpayers' broadcaster. And regardless of our federal funding, we are going to put
Speak
truth
to power. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it hasn't been that way for a good 25 years. I've applied for jobs at the CBC. I've worked in the CBC's main office in downtown Toronto. I have had arguments with their creative teams about how foolish they are. And my friend Paul Chateau used to work for them in the late 80s and early 90s, and he had similar arguments that I posed. However, he got paid way better than I did at that time. So yeah, it's a struggling network. Oddly enough, I can assure you that even if the Liberals lose this coming election to the Conservatives, which might be likely, the Conservatives are basically going to control CBC, and they're going to do the exact same thing the Liberals have. And they're also most likely going to have a minority government, the same way that the previous Conservative administration had. Right. Just because Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the Conservative Party, is a career politician. He has never had a job outside of politics, which is a big blight. A lot of Canadians.
That is a title nobody should be proud of having, honestly. Career politician.
I know him personally because I knew him when he got started, because we're the same age, and he was so unqualified. Blockbuster Video wouldn't hire him. No,
wow.
It's not a joke. That's legit.
That's crazy.
He was a political science major. He couldn't get a part-time job anywhere while he was in college. Some of the rumors of the part-time jobs he did have in college, they're unsubstantiated. And he was appointed the housing minister in Stephen Harper's government. And for the first time in decades, the housing ministry office actually lost houses instead of building any. So instead of no houses being built, houses were destroyed and never replaced under him. So housing actually got more dire under his responsibility of that than currently. And even though he'd been a big proponent in regards to investigating Trudeau and the scandals that he has clearly been captured by other parties that have reinvented his appearance, because he used to look like an accountant, and now he's trying to look like Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ideas and proposals he has are very foolish. The only good one he has is actually not even his idea. It's actually from another political leader who used to be part of the Stephen Harper government, but he started his own party now. And that is basically, hey, maybe Alberta should start selling the United States the oil at full market value instead of 90% discount.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, lots of, basically there hasn't been any, in Canada since 2003, there hasn't been a single politician that is truly representative of the party with which they belong to or the people with which vote them in.
Yeah. So what kind of debt do you have? Is it in the trillions, or like is it as insurmountable as ours?
I don't think it's in the trillions yet, because oddly enough, Canada has a lot of safety nets with regards to certain practices. Like during the 2008 crisis, none of our banks had to get financing from the federal government because they didn't do any of the illegal things that the United States banks do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why the United States banks don't like to bank in Canada. Like we do have U.S. banks here. We got Citibank, we got Wells Fargo, we got Chase, J.P. Morgan. They all operate in Canada, but they operate under strict regulations that prohibit them from doing the same thing that they did that caused the 2008 crash.
Right.
And that's why they don't like to operate up in Canada, because they're like, well, we want to do this. And we're saying, well, you could do that, but it comes with massive fines. And then coincidentally enough, when one of the national banks up here, TD, set up shop in the United States, they immediately got exposed for money laundering in the U.S. and had to pay a $3 billion fine. So... which had nothing to do with any of the operations happening in Canada, because again, they couldn't do what they were doing in the United States and Canada. But as soon as they got into the U.S. and they got caught, it ended up becoming a big ripple effect. So it's pretty crazy here. There are certain people on the independent side of things who are saying if every province was able to form a provincial constitution and get that ratified, it would change the structure of government a little bit in each province, but it also take a great deal of power away from the federal government, forcing, I think, our fourth federal constitution to go into a draft to be voted on, because we have we have the British North America Act, the Statute of Westminster, and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms are the three principal ones, and I think there's some other ones as well. We have a lot of constitutions in Canada.
Okay.
And a lot of them do conflict with each other, which makes it in the court system pretty difficult to sort out, because we have actually exceedingly a great deal of rights, and then we also have a bunch of issues that are like, well, no, you don't have these rights, and then they butt heads all the time, mainly just because in the 1920s, as I said earlier, when you're a premier in a constitutional monarchy, you have a great deal of power. You're almost like a lord in recognition with the crown. And even though it's a voted on position, you have a great deal of means to maintain that position almost indefinitely. And of course, when you find out you have that level of power, you don't want to give it up.
Right.
And so that has been a big problem.
No term
and we got
limits?
really close in the 50s because Canada started actually expanding the military, because after the Second World War, we had the third largest navy in the world.
Okay.
And we were going to be building that up to protect the Northwest Passage, and also support to the United States. And for whatever reason, our Prime Minister Diefenbaker felt that Canada didn't want to be a war nation, and so he canceled a lot of the federal program funding for that. One of which was the legendary Avro Arrow, which was the first supersonic jet ever built, and was in fact actually, even to today's standards, is considered like one of the most advanced pieces of technology to have ever been done for an analog system. And
wow, that's a shame they did that.
It is. You see in history like a lot of blunders too. It's like, oh wow, they actually invested in that. The entire North American continent would be like infinitely more stronger than it is. In fact, it would have been to a point where the United States wouldn't have had to invest nearly as much in the military as they do today, because you'd have the Northern Ally support, which would be, doing their own thing, which means that, oh yeah, we don't have to worry about investing so much to do extra patrols in this area or support in this country, because Canada is able to lift some of the weight as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot of blunders on Canada's side, and when you take a look at it in parallel to the stuff in the U.S., you're like, oh wow, were these two working in coordination to see who could be the most incompetent?
Well, that is the role of government, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, U.S. aid was done in '61, and it's been corrupt ever since. And the funny part is that every administration that has come into power has actually used U.S. aid for their own corruptive means.
Sure.
Yeah.
Once you give somebody the tool to be able to use it legitimately, it's very difficult to let it go. That's why I'm so amused watching everybody yelling and screaming at Trump for all of his executive orders. And I'm just like, hey, you guys empowered the executive over generations to have this ability. Trump's just taking advantage of it to the nth degree. If you want him to stop, you need to curtail the executive. And whose responsibility is that? Congress. But will Congress do it? No, because they don't want to take those toys away from their potential presidential candidate in the future. So it's all this nonsense of stomping your feet and doing nothing. It really is frustrating. I don't like executive orders. I hate the idea of presidential kingly fiats, but here we are. So until you take the power away from him or curtail it somehow, it's here and he's going to use it.
Exactly. And the thing is that Congress is also going to let Trump do it, but I doubt they're going to put any law forward to actually turn those executive actions into laws.
Well, turn them into laws, no, but maybe have to tolerate them until their guy can overturn them when they come into office.
Exactly.
Unless it becomes something like DACA, where Obama effectively passed new law, the Supreme Court backed him up partially on it, and then nobody's taken the initiative to try to overturn it since or pass the DREAM Act. So it all depends. I mean, if Trump throws 1,200 executive orders against the wall and 5 stick, he can call himself planting his flag in the sands of time. So,
but yeah, it's really, I mean, I think it's just kind of hysterical, the fact that they are exposing a lot of waste. They're making a couple of mistakes on the way, but at least they're being quick about trying to rectify them. Which is nice, because I know they made some issues with the VA and now they have to walk it back.
I'm glad. I mean, for everything else that I might criticize Trump for and the things that I'm glad for, the fact that he is taking advantage of every possible aspect of executive power uncovers, and anybody who watches Trump, you're either on his side or you have to be vehemently against it. If you're vehemently against it, you make a big deal out of it and you show, well, gosh, Biden could have done this. Obama could have done this. This isn't any kind of thing. Bring up questions of assumed legality of things like, is birthright citizenship actually what the founders meant when the way that we practice it versus the way that it was written or originally intended? I don't know. Why have we done it this way this whole time? It reminds me of that, I think I've said this before, that old story, you got that family coming together for Christmas and you got like 5 generations of mothers and daughters there, and like daughter's in the kitchen with mom and they're preparing the Christmas ham, and the mom cuts both ends off of the ham and puts in the oven. The daughter says, "Why'd you cut both ends off of the ham?" "Well, that's how my mother did it." "Why?" I don't know. Let's go ask her." And then grandma says, "Oh, that's how my mother did it." They go to great grandma. "Grandma, why'd you do that?" "Oh, well, back in the Depression, we only had an oven this big, so we had to cut the ham and the ends off of the ham to fit in the oven." Some things just happen because of happenstance and continued for no particularly reasonable or rational reason down the line.
Right.
So things like birthright citizenship, things like USAID, all these things that are being questioned now as to their legitimacy, their usefulness, their efficiency. I'm glad it's happening. If he causes a whole bunch of chaos and people actually have to take a look at these things and demand change. That's the only thing that hasn't really happened yet. We got 4 years left. Is uncovering DEI and showing that it's in places is great. Are you going to actually prosecute anybody for having done it all these years and violated the law? Getting rid of USAID. Okay, you've gotten rid of something that's used as a slush fund for years. Are you going to pass any laws to ensure that something like USAID does not bubble up again in the future? These are the things that we have to demand happen after you've uncovered it, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, this has been wrong this whole time. You have to fix it. And that's up to Congress. And I have a serious doubt that even with a majority in Congress, if by the midterms the Republicans pick up more seats, which I would be amazed by, but you never know.
I think they're going to lose three red states, but probably gain 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's great, but even in that case, the idea that you'd get Congress together in enough of a vote to actually make changes to some of these fundamental issues, or to pass laws that would put clear and concise restrictions on future spending or anything else, I'm not convinced that's going to happen anyway. So this could be a very temporary, uncovering of things, but I think status quo will encroach back in eventually.
That is,
anyway.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we are, where we're constantly flip-flopping. We're just having one administration do this, next one undoes it, next one undoes that. It's
it's basically just turning on and off a light switch. The only way you're ever going to get something done is if you get a fresh generation in the House of Reps who have not been there long enough to benefit financially from those parties, and they're able
this
to
is
say,
why I want term limits.
We're going to get rid of it all now.
I want term limits. I want like you get 3 bites at the apple. That's my sort of mythical idea, is that you can conceivably bridge over between administrations for a while, but otherwise you get 3 terms, period, and then you're out. And then if you're going to run again, you have to run for either a different office or a higher office or whatever else. But you've done your civil service, you're done, go back to real life. Career politician should not be a thing. I hate that term, and anybody that ends up with that term is someone who's just become so corrupt that they've weeded themselves in that they can't get out again, and I hate that stuff.
Which is why in Canada, the conservative leader is not going to be doing so well. I will say this, Trump's tactics with the on-again, off-again tariff threats, I think he's doing that to actually knock down, because Canada has this dumb law of provincial barriers for trade, which they shouldn't have. And there's an advantage to those barriers dropping for the United States, because they can then ship stuff anywhere across the border and then across the borders of the provinces a lot easier than just bottlenecking it into one port, which is usually what the U.S. has to do in some camps. Sometimes it's the Detroit-Windsor Funnel. Sometimes it's across Lake Ontario or Lake Michigan. Sometimes there's stuff that comes in on the East Coast or West Coast and then has to be driven in that way. And when every time it crosses the provincial border, there's a surcharge on that, which then gets kicked back to the initial company that is orchestrating the transportation. So I think that's kind of one of the aspects that he's wanting to do. The other part too, which I suspect, is that I think he needs Canada to be stronger as a country, not just economically, but also militarily. For the United States to also benefit from that, which I think is a great thing. Yeah.
So this is, I'm going to be here for a minute. This is the thing that I don't think a lot of people seem to be, I'm not going to claim that Trump is playing 4D chess, but there's some simple truths here and pragmatism that a lot of people don't seem to be at least considering when it comes to what Trump's doing, both tariff-wise, like you just mentioned, but also with what's going on in Europe. And so let me try to make it relatively brief. I think the problem is that people don't seem to understand, or maybe they're starting to understand, that Europe does not have collectively a military defense that could stand up to a threat without the United States.
Yeah.
And part of what Trump has done and is trying to do, I think, is try to get Europe to finally defend themselves and make themselves stronger and can pull them kicking and screaming to do so. A couple of years ago, he was asked, if a NATO country came to you for help, would you defend that NATO country? It's like, only if they've chipped in their fair share to the defense. Because you had a whole bunch of countries in the European Union and elsewise and I was just going to say NATO, that hadn't contributed their not binding, but still part of the agreement that they'd put at least 2% GDP into defense country by country. And a lot of countries hadn't. And all of a sudden, under the potential that Trump as president might not come to the defense of a NATO country that hadn't put in their fair share, suddenly had all these countries say, oh, no, we'll change our budgets, we'll put 2%, we'll put more than 2%. And then just by like the word of one man, suddenly Europe starts to build up its defense. Now you've got what's going on in Ukraine. And the problem is that Ukraine could, spiral out of control very quickly if things go the wrong way. And there's really only three ways out for Ukraine, because Putin's not going to retreat. He's not going to surrender. So that option's off the table. Ukraine's not going to surrender actively unless they absolutely have to. That's probably off the table. So you got 3 options left. Either you just keep pouring money and materiel into Ukraine until everyone in Ukraine dies and there's no fingers left to pull triggers, and it doesn't matter how many weapons you've sent them, and Russia just barrels over. Because Russia's willing to put up 1,000 men to take out 100 Ukrainians because you can't replenish the Ukrainians. They have a limited population of people willing and able. Well, not necessarily willing anymore because they're still pulling people off the street to join they're conscripting people, but able to actually fight the war. And so either option one, Russia
they're
just
not, they're
plays
not
this sort of...
they're not that much bigger though. It's 3 times the population.
Well, yeah, but they're willing to push. Like I say, if they bum rush Ukraine long enough, and with as many people as already left Ukraine, with as many trained soldiers that have already been killed, you're getting a whole bunch of inexperienced people. So over time, you're going to get more bang for your proverbial buck in fighting Ukraine when they have such a limited fighting population. So Ukraine is running out of people to fight the war. So either through just simple attrition, Russia wins by grinding Ukraine into dust. And Ukraine doesn't care about whether or not they lose a whole bunch of people in the long ways. Putin, for all his insanity, he's looking at the long game. If he gets the territory, he's got the territory. He's not buying a glorified victory. He's buying a result. He wants that land. So either Ukraine gets into dust, or you bolster Ukraine's forces with outside countries, which would immediately trigger World War III, which nobody wants, or a brokered peace. And the only way you get to a brokered peace is what Trump was attempting to do before the big Oval Office conflagration the other week, is where it's like, okay, we're going to establish a non-military American presence in Ukraine that's financially and economically viable for us, which means that now we have a stake in Ukraine that doesn't threaten Russia directly, but Russia, if you hit any of our people, it's going to be a big problem. And Putin doesn't want World War III either, but he will do so or start it if he needs to defend his borders. So that was the wedge to try to start negotiations. Of course, then Zelensky in public, he should have said it behind closed doors. In public, he says you can't negotiate with Putin, which destroys the entire purpose of getting the contract with Ukraine in the first place and throws everything into disarray. And everybody's like, oh, why is Trump being so nice to Putin? And I'm like, of course he has to be nice to Putin. He wants to find brokered peace. You don't get a brokered peace by bad-mouthing the guy who's got all the cards. And Putin has all the cards as compared to Ukraine. So everybody's like, oh, now he's a Putin lover and everything. And I'm like, no, Trump is trying to buy a result. And you know why he's trying to buy this result? In order to buy time. It doesn't stop Russia from becoming aggressive in the future. What it does is it buys time for Europe to get its act together and defend itself in a way that mitigates the risk of Putin making such an action in the future. And that's what people, I mean, I don't think I'm too off the mark here in thinking that it's not 4D chess, it's just pragmatism.
Yeah.
If the war spirals out of control, Europe is not in a position to defend itself without American support. And American support would immediately mean catastrophe all over the place. Individual countries in Europe have really good individual strengths. Like, you know, UK's got the SAS, and I think some of the Nordic countries have some really good intelligence gatherings.
Well, they also have nuclear weapons that they would not hesitate to launch.
Right.
Because, again, because they're an island, they would have a significant distance from possible radiation fallout. But also they also have means to clean up that radiation really quickly. So that gives them a stake. Right now, basically, Trump knows that Russia has already got the land that it has. It's not going to be able to give it up. If they do that mineral rights deal, which is basically just saying, allowing the United States to mine the rights equal to the value of money that they've already donated.
Yes.
And maybe even set up a shop where there's a split revenue with Ukraine once that money is paid back. Yep. That helps build up the economy. The other part that I'm wondering is, do you think Trump would try to have Ukraine get their nuclear arms restored that they forfeited in '94 for essentially permanent defense from the United States?
Russia would never ever allow that. They would immediately start.
They would.
That's not going to happen. You can't turn Ukraine into. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, Ukraine is going to have to be for the foreseeable future a buffer zone, and that's it. And it might be a smaller buffer zone after the deal's done, because Ukraine is going to lose some territory. It's not a matter of that they will. It's a matter of how much. Right. And either it's going to be big chunks if this goes on much longer, or it's going to be smaller chunks just to keep things, even keel for a while.
I suspect it's going to be smaller chunks every so many years, because Putin knows, I got this far with this much land. I can stop now, and I can wait until another.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I can
wait out. Yeah, but
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. We're buying time. We're buying time not only for Europe individually to bolster its own defenses, but also for Putin to die. Because presumably somebody else comes in with the situation different than when Putin came in with a different mindset. You can hope. It's not necessarily a guaranteed hope, but there's a hope that you have somebody that's at least a little bit more moderate or amenable to negotiation in the future than Putin, because he's not going to live forever. So if we stop the Ukraine war now and it staves off another military conflict for 5, 10, 15 years, that gives, again, Europe time to defend itself, things to settle down a little bit, perhaps Putin to die, regime change, who knows what else. And it also allows us not to have to split our attention between what's going on in Europe and what is probably oncoming in China. So this is, but everybody's like, oh my gosh, Trump's a Putin lover now. He's Putin's agent. It's like, no, he's playing diplomacy. You guys do not understand the language of diplomacy. This is how nation states move. You don't insult the guy who's got more nuclear weapons than the other guy and you, and has more incentive to not stop the war versus stopping it.
Not only that, you can strike a lot faster than the United States could, just because of proximity of
exactly
where the target is, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And Europe's under far more immediate threat than the rest of us. So Europe being idolizing Zelensky and saying we'll go to the mat for you, and Starmer saying he's going to have boots on the ground. Like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Anyway,
the thing is, Europe has over 700 million people, and they're industrial countries that have been industrial since the word was invented. They should have the money to create a fighting force that is equal to the United States.
They do, but unfortunately over the last 10, 15 years, they've cut their budgets, they've reduced their resources going into military and their focus on it. And this is why they need to, and you can't you can't turn on a dime and rebuild a military force overnight. This is why we need the Ukraine thing to stop now and buy time. And this is why Trump is pushing all the NATO countries to increase their budgets into defense.
For this very reason. They've gotten a good kick in the ass. That's what they've gotten. Yes. That's good.
They have, and the reason that they cut their funding was because all that money was actually going to contractors that were partnered with the Pentagon, so it was being tapped into the United States. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to cut their funding and then find new companies domestically that could do the same thing. They never actually ended up investing that because, again, a lot of those European countries had governmental change to the point where it's like, I'm just going to maintain that we're not going to invest in this military because we don't need it. Like, Europe is a European Union. We are all friends. We're not going to fight amongst each other, completely forgetting the fact that there's a guy who literally grew up during the Soviet Union, saw it fall before him, and has kind of had this subtle desire to restore it as it once was.
Yes. and here's the other piece of mentality that people really need to start thinking about. And I don't imagine I'm the first one to have said this, but I haven't heard anybody else say this explicitly. In a lot of instances now, it's not a matter of the U.S. having allies, it's the U.S. having dependents in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
And so that needs to change. And whether people want to admit it or not, whether he meant to or not, I don't know if I could credit Trump with it or otherwise, or the people around him, but that is what is being attempted to be done. But many people just see this as Trump abandoning his friends and putting up to Putin and everything else.
Yeah,
like
but
there's more gears moving here.
Have you heard the General Secretary of NATO? He's like, Trump is right. Some people see it. Some people understand what's going on.
Well, because in previous administrations for the U.S., the dependency allowed for U.S. to have dominance. And Trump is like, I don't think that's fair, because he'd rather have...
Or healthy.
He'd rather have countries that are not his ally, that are competent enough to defend themselves, that are also not going to risk a war with the United States, as opposed to one that is so subservient that they can be annexed by another nation. And then now you've got basically less of a sovereign set of states throughout the world, and now you have more of a conglomerate, which is also coming to another aspect where people who are looking at Trump's claims as if he's being fully literal with everything, saying, is he trying to create a North American Union that'd be akin to the European Union over here? And I don't think that's the case, because in the last 10 years, Canada's military has actually added 20% of a force that is not qualified for military service, essentially weakening a huge section of it, because there's been this kind of metric. It's a humorous metric, but it's actually relatively factual, which is that one Canadian soldier is equal to 10 foreign insurgents across the pond, which is why whenever during the war in Afghanistan, whenever Canadians had we didn't send a whole lot of troops over, but whenever we did for basically patrolling and whatnot, all the insurgent bases that they patrolled nearby, those insurgents would actually get up and flee, as opposed to shooting back at the helicopters. Whereas if it was the U.S. helicopter, they would shoot back at them. And the reason being is that Canada has had a reputation for 100 years that we do not like to take prisoners, as polite as we are. We're actually very vicious on the battlefield. But that has been weakening because a lot of the people that have been integrated into the military for various DEI stuff, they don't wash out, but they should. They're just left there, and they're essentially going to be fodder. And so the previous generation of soldiers, which are pretty remarkable and actually have got a lot of camaraderie with the United States Marines, the Army, and the artillery teams, all those guys are like, wow, you've got your next generation of soldiers is a mixed bag between people that would meet the standards that you require and people that don't. And you're essentially worried that if they go to war, and even this is true in the case of the United States military, because they've also adopted a bunch of them, but I think they're kind of purging them out now. You're essentially sending them to the meat grinder if there ever is going to be a conflict. And now you're basically like doing a disservice to the very, country you're supposed to protect, because you're just getting these people and you're trying to train them, but they're complaining or they're not doing it, or they're launching grievances. And then it's like, well, what happens when they have to be deployed? Well, they're going to be deployed. They're not going to know what to do out there. They're going to die instantly. That's tons of money down the drain in those lives, and their families are suffering from that. And then you've got a diminished force, right next to these people that the only reason they're not up to par is because they complained to a party and a government that decided to back them, as opposed to saying, no, you're in the military, toughen up, lose some weight, do some push-ups, get your proper gear training, right, and go out there and do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I don't really understand this DEI stuff in the military. It's like you want your military to be a lethal force, right? You want them to be scary as fuck.
Yeah, but undoomed lethality and intimidation is just toxic masculinity on parade. You can't have that. You can't have that.
It's a hate fact.
I know.
In the Canadian military, we had this legendary soldier named Leo Major. Leo Major had one eye. And in the Second World War, he actually managed to capture an entire German battalion by himself. And we called this the Maple Standard. Right. So and the whole goal was that we were supposed to try and get every single one of our soldiers to be as clever and as tough as Leo Major in order to do that. And the metric was there for quite a long time. Again, the Canadian soldiers have a reputation within the Middle East and even in parts of Russia. Oddly enough, Russia is actually afraid of Canada, and objectively speaking, they kind of have no right to be, but for whatever it is, they are, which is why the Arctic Ocean is kind of like Canada and Russia are kind of fighting over it in a cold war, like no actual boots on the ground type of stuff or boats in the water. But we're fighting over the Arctic Ocean for the oil and mineral rights. And you would think Russia would just kind of swoop in and say, no, it's ours, but they haven't. And I think it has to do with more of the fact that we have like 60 years of you do not mess with the Canadian soldier or the Canadian military.
You know what? I just like the idea that at some point I assume this guy was Major, and it sounds like an airplane joke.
Well, he passed away in 2008, but he was
wow.
He did 5 years of service in Second World War, and then 3 years in the Korean War. His rank was only ever as high as sergeant, but he was. I mean, he was basically like par for the course when it came to a lot of Canadian soldiers at that time, because we were used as cannon fodder at first, and then when we saw how the enemy treated us, it kind of lit a fire that nobody expected. And on D-Day, we got further in than any of the other allies in. We won the Battle of Ypres and Battle of the Somme, and we got nicknamed the Stormtroopers because all you heard was thunder when we were marching towards you. We even did this new tactic where we would launch artillery, but we would actually send our troops out first before we actually fired those artillery shells. So by the time the shells impacted and kicked up smoke, the enemy could not see the Canadians coming. When the smoke cleared, the Canadians were like right at the trenches and they had nothing to do, and we just slaughtered the hell out of them, to the point where certain aspects of the Geneva Convention had to be redefined because of Canada doing what would now be considered war crimes to the enemy. So, and this has been kind of a reputation that in the Canadian military and Navy, they try to maintain, but also say exercise extreme discipline because we don't want to be an international criminal.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing
But
to avoid.
all that
yeah.
stuff has been diminished in the last couple of decades because of these DEI programs. So I know people that are retired generals and majors and admirals that are basically saying we're coming out of retirement to kind of fix the DEI stuff, but it's a huge hurdle.
Yeah, because it's become so ingrained into so many places over the last decade or more.
And it's ingrained only on the administrative level, not in the actual like on the front line level. And the 20% that are there that are actually incompetent, it's like all we have to do is just get the courts to side with us on the regulations to kick them out, so then we can actually start training and getting people up to par. And that, and then the thing is, like, the United States military is doing that as well. Like, they got rid of a bunch of like the DEI women that are not capable of doing stuff, and then throwing certain ones that are on the front lines that can't measure up, pulling them back to be like, okay, we have to redefine how we can best use you without you compromising your fellow soldiers when you're in the field.
Yeah, it's the G.I. Jane quandary. From that
pretty
movie
much.
And everything.
Because there are going to be some exceptions to the rule with some women that can actually measure up and meet some of the male statistics. But the thing is, that can't be par for the course. It's like,
well, no, it can't be par for the course. You can't lower those standards, and I mean, you can't necessarily set it on gender. You just have to set it on standard. Either you can meet the standard or you can't. That's it. Long and the short, and that's it. And not it. You're either this tall to ride this ride, or you're not. And then just cut the line. And that should have been it the whole time. But then everybody's like, oh well, but this is sexist and this is unequal and everything. It's like, yeah, but your feelings on this do not matter next to military efficiency and deadliness. And it's just like, no, just
and
stop.
then the final thing that the Navy should be doing in the United States, which it's been petitioned a couple times for Canada to do that. So if you're going to become a Marine, you have to go through what's called Hell Week.
Yep.
And they do Hell Week essentially in like Florida or San Francisco, like, down where it's actually warmer climate most of the year. And Canada has been constantly saying, like, listen, you guys are Marines, you're supposed to be the best in the world. Come up and do Hell Week in Hudson Bay, where it's freezing all the time.
Right.
Because our soldiers do that. And that's what you need to do, because it toughens you up even more. Like, doing Hell Week in the heat is one thing, and then doing it in the cold is another, and it should be both.
Yeah. And it weeds out the psychologically and physically unfit. That's just the long and the short.
Pretty much, because
it's very
They
brutal.
they should do both, because you never know where you're going to be fighting.
Right.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's like one of the things that was kind of crazy is that when because I was reading this book by a bunch of Marines talking about the Iraq War and how they went through Hell Week and they're kind of prepared for a bunch of stuff, and then when the cold fronts came in, they kind of didn't know what to do. And who was it that was able to actually pick up the slack? The Canadians. Why? They were used to the cold front. And on top of that, whatever training was happening, I'm pretty sure that they fixed it to this day. But during the Iraq War and the first decade of the Afghanistan War, the United States military had this horrible thing of friendly fire, like shooting themselves. Just because whatever thing was going on in the training there, whether it was being rushed in because you had the experienced Marines who hadn't seen combat really, but knew how to do the stuff. And then you had the ones that volunteered after 9/11, and they're basically like, fast tracked through the program because we needed boots on the ground, and mistakes were made. And it's just like, okay, well, clearly you guys have the programs in place, but you're not giving the time needed for everyone to kind of digest the knowledge and the habits, because you have a story where a unit leader pulls up and they're outside a secured building where someone has opened fire on their team, and then they returned fire, and then they stopped, and they never thought to think about, like, well, why would the enemy who opened fire on us stop? Because they're the enemy. If an enemy is at your gates, you're not stopping firing until they're all dead. Right. And no one on that team, even the commanding officer, realized that it was their own guys on the inside of the building until another higher ranking commanding officer came in and realized it. And it's like, that's what the U.S. military was dealing with at the turn of the century. And that's why there's so much struggles going on in Afghanistan, is because there was this ideologically motivated rush to go out and do all these things as opposed to like a strategic one. And that's why, like, the British soldiers that came into aid, the Canadian soldiers that came into aid, I think some French soldiers, but not many, they all actually had to like help build everybody up. But it was still kind of like a battle where there's no way we can win because the territory is too hostile and inhospitable, and these people are using guerrilla war tactics. And then you realize, oh yeah, all the military training from the Pentagon to all the Western nations, they don't know how to combat guerrilla war tactics, because guerrilla war tactics are mostly improvised. And so, because they know that, they always take advantage. And that's why you have the Afghan war was not a success. It was a failure, and all the gains they made were kind of walked back, especially with the pullout that was incompetently done with the Biden administration.
Oh yeah.
And it just goes into the rooter part of the cause, which is if you get rid of the rushing, if you get rid of the ideology, you'll probably get the soldiers that you need. And then if you get the government involved with regards to the fact that these are supposed to be soldiers of last resort, then you have more respect with regards to the military.
Well then.
It's gonna have to digest that.
It's a lot to digest, yeah.
Yeah. On that note, I do need to fade out for the evening, unfortunately.
Yeah, likewise. It's 1:45 here. I have a lot of stuff to do on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we've had a good run, so I guess we should round off the stream anyhow. Anything you want to plug, Scribe?
Let's see. Well, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern will be my weekly Sunday stream where I take a look at interesting stories throughout the week that at least I find interesting. And then what else is happening? So now I've set up Monday and Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific as my days for my new series called DEI Death Watch, where I take a look at stories that are. I've decided so much is happening with DEI, it's best not to try to distribute. I'll just make a one set show for talking about what's going on with the whole DEI falling apart or being doubled down on by different companies and entities and things. So that's Monday and Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And then, of course, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern is TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks for different subjects and things. And, of course, if there's ever a time either one of you want to come on for a TED Talk of one sort or another, just let me know, and I'll pencil you in or find a way to make it work for the week. And, of course, now I'm also a regular panelist on Midnight's Edge in the morning, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:05 a.m. Pacific and noon 05 Eastern. But I try to make it those days. Some days I might have to wave off because of work and stuff, but I'm a busy boy. I didn't realize how busy I am. Here I am.
Yeah, really.
Talking like a hurricane.
Really busy.
There you go. Yep.
All right. Anything you want to plug, Script Doctor?
Sure. Just check out my Saturday night show, Scripts on Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, where I review screenplays that are circulating around Hollywood that may or may not be put into production. A couple of screenplays we've already reviewed are actually in production, one of which is about John Madden. Another one is How to Save a Marriage, that has Robert Pattinson signed on to it. So if you want to get the jump on what is going to be coming out that are not huge tentpole existing IP features, my show is a great way for that. I also do, when I'm able to, appear on Midnight's Edge in the morning, and any other streams that I'm invited to that also work within my current set schedule. So just to find out where I am, follow my channel or follow me on the Twitter X's there, and you will see where I pop up.
All right. So that's it. Thank you very much for showing up. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll try to make a new one. I'm not sure if it's going to be next Saturday or whenever, but I will be back. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye, everyone.